AskReddit. Identical twins of Reddit. Who owns a pet after living separately? What was your pet's reaction when it saw two owners? My mom is an identical twin. My childhood cat Linus was a total scaredy cat, abused at an early age and terrified of new people, but an absolute sweetheart with us. When my aunt came to visit for the first time, Linus walked right up to her and snuggled against her leg. She started scratching him, and all was going great until he saw my mom. Cue very quick back and forth head turns, followed by running up the stairs and hiding for hours. Poor baby. Damn, I figured cats identified people more by their scent, although I guess there's a good possibility that identical twins pretty much smell alike too. Rusty was a good boy and was ecstatic there were two of us. More to play with, I guess. He learned to tell us apart though, and I kind of felt like an indulgent uncle with him. It's even more fun as my brother and I have had children in our own families, and they can't tell us apart until they're almost 2. My nephew didn't meet me until he was 3. I had been living in another country. When he first saw me, he looked totally confused and eventually asked, "Are you like another daddy?" I'm not a twin, but we look enough alike to understand his confusion. My dad and his brother were identical and same voice too. My dad had rescued a nest of bird babies whose mama never came back, and he would feed them. He would go outside and say, "Where are my babies?" And their little heads would pop up, chirping and chattering, and he would feed them. Had a vet friend who told him how and what to feed them. One day his brother came over and my dad told him to go out and say, "Where are my babies?" And the bird stayed silent, not a peep. He tried again to no avail. My dad said it, and instantly the babies popped up and chirping. They couldn't see him, and his voice was identical, yet they just knew. It was uncanny. I know that with most birds, the mother would whistle a quiet tune to the eggs quite frequently, resulting in the chicks being able to identify their mother's call and vice versa, no matter how similar other birds' call is. It's the same with bats, which is incredibly useful to them since all the babies are always together in a colony. Identical twin here. It's weird because my dog loves me but hates my sister. Like, when she comes around, he growls at her and barely lets her touch him. I have no idea why. He isn't like this to the rest of my family or friends. Maybe he thinks she's an imposter. LMAO, we have no idea. I would almost guarantee it's because she's almost identical to you, but not quite the same. It's probably really confusing for the poor little guy. Have you ever heard of the uncanny valley? It's probably something like that. My dad and my uncle were identical twins. Their voices sound so similar, even my mom would get confused before the invention of caller ID. My dad passed away last year, and when my uncle came over, the family beagle didn't notice, but when my uncle spoke, he perked up. But then he would go and sniff him and get sad again. Something I've never considered. How does your mom handle seeing your uncle? I imagine seeing your dead significant other in their twin could be hard to handle. Not to step on your loss, please ignore if need be. My sister's dog was confused for a second because we sound alike, but then he realized I wasn't her but similar, so he also adores me. Sometimes when I'm visiting and he gets in trouble with her, he comes to me and climbs in my lap. He only weighs 100 pounds. My sister and I aren't twins, but we look very similar and sound nearly identical. Before I moved halfway across the country and developed an accent, we did sound identical. She has 6 dogs, and all of them took an immediate liking to me the first time they heard me speak. I sound like Mom, so I must be good people. We live together, but my cat doesn't particularly like him. I can manhandle that fluffy little thing and rub his stomach all I want. As for my twin, well, he bites him if my brother touches him wrong. To be honest, I'll bite your brother too if he touches me wrong. I'm an identical twin. My dogs had no issues distinguishing between me and my sister. They could tell by smell. Dogs can also distinguish by the way you pet them, the way you walk, your voice. These facts also play a role. My partner is an identical twin. Our dog hates his twin and won't let him in the house, and our cat loves him. The cat loves him out of spite. We never had pets growing up, so my twin was pretty nervous. My wife's 9-pound Pomeranian could smell his fear and preyed on it. I'm trying hard to imagine a 9-pound Pomeranian prey on anything, but I'm not having much success. My twin and I have lived separately and together several times. My dog treated my sister and me like two separate members of the same family, but both our cats, one is mine, one is hers, have made it clear from the beginning that the other twin is a second-class citizen. We have exactly the same voice, so when we visit each other, there's about 1 minute of, "Why are there two of you?" And then it's business as usual. My dog used to do a weird thing. If he was on my uncle's lap and my dad walks in, he'll switch to my dad's lap and vice versa. So the idea of second-class citizen from dog's perspective keeps changing time to time. LOL. The first oddly specific Ask Reddit I am qualified to answer. My dog lost his mind when my twin came to visit. He excitedly dashed back and forth between the two of us, thrilled to see us both. Then again, he's a golden retriever, so he does that with everyone. Goldens are the best. But yeah, they'll also greet just about anyone like they're BFFs. Long time ago, my grandfather had a dog that went with him to work the fields on his farm. He passed away and dog stayed with my father and his mother. G-Father's brother came up the driveway one day to visit, walking and looking like my G-Pa. The dog went crazy in the house. She was barking and going from window to window. They finally let her out as he was walking up the steps to the porch. She ran up to him all excited until she saw it wasn't her master. It was like someone had kicked her. The tail went under and slowly walked over to her bed and laid down in her sadness. Oh my goodness, I felt so terrible for the dog. I have an identical twin. My sister decided to try and surprise me by coming to visit from out of the state. She had a key, and my dog growled and barked at her and wouldn't let her in while I was in the shower. LOL. He didn't care if she looked and sounded like me. She wasn't coming in unless I let her. They rely on sense of smell like we rely on vision, but more so. My dad's brother looks almost exactly like him. So similar that even the cousins get them confused sometimes when we're all together. My uncle came to visit once and came in the house while my dad was still outside helping with the bag. My golden doodle went bounding up to him, and my dad is her favorite person, and barked a greeting. My uncle replied, "Oh, and who is this?" They have totally different voices, octaves apart. My dog panicked, froze, hair went up, crouched way down, and she turned to look at me like, "Something is wrong with Dad." Then my dad walked in. My dog realized that Dad was still here and realized that this is a fun new person just like him. She happily went to investigate and say hi. My doodle now loves my uncle, but that first moment really freaked her out. My grandfather had a younger brother whose voice sounded indistinguishable from his own. To all of us humans anyway. They were not twin-like in appearance, nor scent, one assumes. One day, our big studly master of his domain, German Shepherd, catches Uncle Reggie on the front porch and starts going at him, and Uncle Reggie says, "Oh, Scout, now stop that." And Scout did the full cartoon stop, head sideways, and that whimper that sounds like a question mark. So his appearance wasn't mistaken by the dog at all, but he did confuse the hell out of him with the identical voice. My rabbit will go to my twin sister if she calls him from the other room. We have the same voice. But once he arrives and sees it's her and not me, he stops short because he was expecting mom pets. He eventually let her pet him. It's the betrayal when she imitates my voice, intonation and all, that makes him a little huffy at first. I love that little huffy that animals do when they're all fed up with your things. Me too, and I think rabbit huffiness can take the cake most times. Behaviorists have actually observed, and with my little dude I can confirm, that when rabbits are angry enough at you to hold a grudge, they'll sit with their fluffy butts facing you and every so often turn their head to make sure you're aware they're facing their backs to you. It's adorable and works every time to make me snuggle that fur face until he's not mad at me anymore. My cat could give a Her new puppy thought I was her until she walked in the room and then decided to bark and growl at me. He has only met me a few times and still gets us confused. On a separate note, after college, my twin's older dog lived with my parents at the same time I did. I can't remember why my parents had him for that period of time. He goes absolutely crazy when I visit, and it's the best welcome back ever. I think my dog is too dumb to realize we are twins and just comes to whoever calls her name because she thinks there is food involved. Call my name and give me food, and I'll come every damn time you call my name too. My mother's cat finds all opening fridge people identical. When I first saw my twin's pet, I was shocked. We hadn't talked to each other in about 3 years, and we both got a black toy cavoodle. It was literally like he had mirrored my dog. Still don't know whether he did it on purpose. My sister and I live 1,000 miles apart from each other, and each adopted all black cats in the same week without talking to each other. Crazy stuff. Haha. I'd love an AskReddit about these kind of stories. They are my favorite. My mom's friend has an identical twin on the other side of the country, and one time her sister picked her up at the airport and they had on the exact same coat. Not really the same situation, but I think it's really all about smell and possibly mannerisms. My twin sister and I have a pet cat together, and despite being blind, he favors my company. He doesn't know we look the same, he just knows what I smell like and how I act. So in a scenario in which he could see and only knew one of us, I think he would still run away if he had ever met the other twin, despite liking a similar person already. This is the best answer. It shows that they sense the essence of the person, not just how they look. Not a twin. The first dog my husband and I had was very much my husband's dog. Worshipped the ground he walked on. One day while my husband was going on a walk with him, the dog saw someone that looked just like me from the back. Even my husband was confused. The dog ran up to her happy as can be, and then she turned around. He growled at her. He barked at her while walking backwards. He was usually a very mellow dog. When they returned to our apartment, the dog sniffed me for a moment and proceeded to snuggle me for the rest of the night. Guess he couldn't handle the betrayal. My Yorkie had no idea I had a twin until my wife surprised me by purchasing a ticket for him to visit for our birthday. He walked in surprising me, and she lost her mind and ran up to him excited, thinking it was me. The kitchen was adjacent to the front door, and I was standing in it. As she got to the door, she stopped and noticed us both, and got even more excited, running back and forth between the two of us. One of the cutest things I have ever seen. My dog couldn't tell Asians apart, I guess, and followed the wrong Asian lady at the dog park. My dog got scared by an Indian friend of mine because he picked her up too fast, so she barked out of terror. Whenever she sees an Indian friend I have, she immediately growls, so they say she's racist, and they mess with me by saying she's like her owner, it seems. My sister and I are identical twins. Literally, the only way to tell them apart is which side their hair part's on and their glasses. Our family cat absolutely adores the younger twin and despises the other. And I'm absolutely certain that they have exploited that more than once. Ask Reddit. What are you doing to better yourself during this COVID-19 outbreak? Part 2. Not as healthy as everyone else seems to be, but as a cake decorator with no cakes to decorate, I'm practicing brush embroidery today. Just working on my skills while I have 8 hours of work and nothing to do. Wow, I'm a cake decorator and baker as well. Normally, I don't bake or cake on my off time, but I am severely missing my turntable. All my tools are at work. What is brush embroidery? I'm a doctor and I work on a respiratory ward. For the love of all that is holy, it's not a difficult concept. Stay inside. Edit. I should have to point out that you shouldn't literally stay inside and that it's for 3 weeks. I mean, at this point, I think I'd like to do that happily, but that's by the by. Please, by all means, go into your gardens, if you have them, and take some exercise as per local rules. Here in the UK, it's once per day for exercise and only essential shopping. I'm talking more to the crowds that are still gathering in the play parks. In the UK, as people seem to be treating this as a government-sanctioned 3-week holiday. You all understand what I'm getting at. Please be sensible and do your bit to help curb the virus spread. Have lost 12 pounds with intermittent fasting and moderate exercise. Tackling clutter and paperwork around my home also. I'm doing intermittent fasting too. Turns out it's quite easy when you don't have an abundance of good food at home. Finally writing the movie I've always wanted to. I'm more than 60 pages in. It's just flowing off my fingertips. Pure magic. Doing yoga, meditation daily, sometimes twice a day, and focusing on my mental health. I've been using Youper every day for journaling and goal setting, and have finally decided to do something about my chronic condition by downloading Curable. I've even gotten more organized, which is big for me. Quarantine has been good. Who would have thunk? I've been doing yoga every day after having it as a failed New Year's resolution for the past 2 years. Everything hurts, but it feels like a return to home for me, and I can already see changes in my legs muscle tone. Quarantine has been great for me so far. It'll be weird returning to normal life after this. My husband and I are actually sticking to our 6-day-a-week workouts without the gym. Today was an hour power walk up major hills and a 40-minute HIIT workout in the living room. Can you please describe the living room workout? I'm looking for something that doesn't require equipment like a treadmill or stationary bike. A great place to start is going on YouTube and searching for something like body weight HIIT workout. I found a lot of great ones on there that I've been following. Also, I pay $20 a month to subscribe to the Alexia Clark app. She releases workouts 5 days a week that are usually a great mix of upper body, lower body, and full body days, and you can choose to view the workouts in gym or home mode. Last leg day of hers, my hubby, who is a pretty fit dude, hopped on and did it with me and left him walking weird for 3 days, so they're real shredders. Working on my posture with one of these and learning about home improvement. I work from home about 30 minutes a day while still getting everything I need to get done completed, which really makes you think about the standard 8-hour workday. Then I check out this old house and the do-it-yourself subreddits. This was my favorite part of working from home when I did it. Instead of the usual downtime at work where I'd BS on my phone, I was able to do my laundry or vacuum or any other chore during that time so that my evenings were completely free and open. I'd become overweight since alcoholism and depression took over me. I started walking every morning. Haven't got up and did something that made me feel good since I was in the service. I think I can keep it up. Give Couch 2.5K a shot. I could barely run a mile at the beginning of January, and yesterday I ran 6 miles. I'll do that, thank you. I've started to do 2 things so far. Learning to play the piano, which I've wanted to do for literally decades. Cleaning the flat from top to toe. Doing just a small amount each day, knowing I'm stuck in here for at least another several weeks, makes it easier to do a useful amount and then, that's enough for today. Then there's continuing to learn French on Duolingo, and I'm thinking of adding Japanese or Russian to that too. Work on that hand independence on the piano. It makes everything else easier down the road. My practice is usually a few minutes of scale and chord warm-ups with intense focus on 1 or 2 exercises. I then work on a solo for 10 to 15 minutes. Then I dick around on some Showtimes or Disney music for a while, so I get some fun too. Enjoying not doing anything. This is exactly what I should do, but I literally can't. Even when I'm free for a few days, I feel like I'm wasting my time if I don't get something done for the day, and any time spent relaxing, enjoying, etc. just makes me feel guilty. I've also never done nothing at all. And I guess I should stop and smell the roses once in a while, because would you look at the time? Already 5 years have passed and I'm wondering where it all went. Even if I did relax in those 5 years, I don't remember it. I follow the safety rules, and I proposed, by phone, my elderly neighbors to do their shopping, or call me if they like a social talk by phone. I also maintain a relaxed and productive lifestyle. Honestly, out of everything I read on here, yours was the most simple and touching. Just asking some old, probably lonely people if they'd like to have a chat? That is effing beautiful. You're a great person. Besides online schoolwork, I'm working on my Raspberry Pi and Python skills. I already have a half dozen projects in mind, and I'm really excited to get back into coding for fun. I got a Raspberry Pi and I don't know what to do with it. I made a web host, a Twitter bot, and a retro gaming machine out of it, and I don't know what to do anymore. What are some of your ideas? Watching Gordon Ramsay YouTube videos on autoplay. Learning how to cook or learning how to be a stupid donkey? I'm watching movies. What were your favorites watched so far? I enjoyed watching Claws, Midway, and some rom-coms. I started with some Lynch movies I didn't see yet. I just did Blue Velvet and Wild at Heart. Next one is Lost Highway. I saw it, but I don't remember much. And then I'll move on to other stuff from the list. Quit nicotine, sugar, dairy, and gluten. Been working out every other day. Virtual interviews. Virtual interviews for jobs, I presume. How is that going? I've been unmotivated to search and put myself out there. What industry do you work in? Yoga every damn day, except Sunday. Can you recommend any for beginners? like ones that are different every day, if you can. I recommend Yoga with Adriene. She has a series of videos where she breaks down certain poses for beginners. She also has a variety of classes focused on different needs: relaxation, workout, cramps, headaches, etc. She's great. I'm a former yoga teacher and just make up my own flows every day now. With enough time and practice, you'll be able to tune into what your body needs more effectively each day. I'm learning Mandarin and trying to get my qualification coursework done. It's one work is paying for, but I haven't had the time recently to properly get going. What are you using to learn Mandarin? I've been searching for a course app, something to do the same. I'm trying to quit smoking to get high off cannabis. I'm switching over to edibles because I know the future me will thank me for that. It's going well so far. I ran out of what I had before the shelter-in-place order, and I've been doing fine with edibles. You buying or baking? Tips: always decarb, you probably already know that, and save your dregs and put them into chocolates or spaghetti sauce, or make what are called firecrackers, which is weed honey, and graham crackers. There's still THC in there, and it's a waste to simply throw the dregs out. I've always wanted to learn how to do fancy braids in my hair, so I've committed to doing a French braid every day of the quarantine. I'm getting better already. Meeting Fitbit goals every day, brushing up on my crappy high school Spanish once a day, and learning to sew for charity projects. Trying to do body, mind, and spirit improvement from home. It's obviously a huge privilege to have secure employment and good health during this time, so I feel like I need to do what I can to not waste that opportunity. Hey man, I was reading all these wholesome comments and I happened to stumble upon this one. Just came by to tell you that if you want to chat in Spanish sometime, you can DM me freely. And if we ever get to talk, I could also improve my English a bit. Walking my dog for an hour plus each day. There's gonna be a lot of sad doggies when we all go back to work. I've been walking my dog basically every day since this started. School has been shifted to online classes for the rest of the semester. So when I get back, either over the summer or in the fall, he's gonna be pretty upset. I gave up alcohol. I started that about 2 weeks before S hit the fan here, but I'm proud of myself for continuing with it despite the sudden difficulties that I would love to face with a bottle of gin. Sleep. Fix my house, build a tree house, text this girl I like, dream about cuddling with her again after all this is over. Just think, after all this is over, you'll be smooching her in a sick treehouse. If only it could be true. I was just friend-zoned because she didn't want commitment. I'm trying to shore up my language skills by hitting the dictionary for several foreign languages. Maybe even become a professional translator one day. I'm just a hobbyist translator right now. Also trying to teach myself art by getting a Wacom tablet, so it's another lifelong hobby skill I could use. And slowly, very slowly, learning how to program. Congrats on getting a Wacom. Did you get an Intuos or a Clintic? I personally work with the Into style tablet where you draw flat but look up at your screen. It's a learning curve, but I prefer it for ergonomic reasons. And it's easy as drawing on paper now, more or less. I hope you find success with that and your other endeavors. Taking care of my new baby. It's a weird time to be on maternity leave. It's nice having my husband home. We weren't expecting that. Congratulations. I've been so unhappy lately, especially with my job. I hated it so much, and it took so much life away from me, so I quit. Actually, due to COVID-19, and also what I've been feeling for a really long time with the hours. I got myself another job and had plenty of employers reaching out for interviews. So there's that, and also I had the urge to paint. I'm not some big shot, but I wanted to use my time I had at home to do something I knew I had time for finally. I tried to paint once before, but I felt like I did it for the wrong reasons. But now that I did it just to ease my mind and not have a plan, I did a lot better this time. Hope to continue with this in the future. Hey, I'm also getting back into painting as well. I have so many art supplies just collecting dust. If you can, Michael's Crafts sells 5 packs of canvases for around $10 right now. I picked up 2 of those packs for my social distancing time. They were also having a decent deal on Liquitex Basics, I believe. You can order online or order a store pickup. That way you don't have to interact with anyone. Hope that helps. Honestly, I'm getting sober. Only 3 days right now, but for me, 3 days clean and sober is a huge step. Keep it up. Congrats on 3 days. So essentially, my senior year of high school just got canceled, along with my track season that was coming up. So instead of being sad and depressed, I've decided that this is my perfect opportunity to get the 8-pack I've always wanted. Still only have a 7, but I'm getting there. My end goal is to look like a Greek god. LOL. AskReddit. If you were a villain and could choose any animal to fight by your side, what animal would you choose and why? Komodo dragon. Actually, the Komodo dragon would be the main villain, and I'd be the companion animal. I can see it. The hero beats you down and you laugh and say, "Oh, you thought I was the boss." And the Komodo stands on 2 legs and starts laughing. And I don't know if you've seen a Komodo stand up, but they do it a lot to fight other Komodos, so, that can't be good news. A raccoon. Better yet, make it a pack of raccoons, each with its own specific skill set. I read that wrong at first. I was trying to figure out why trash pandas needed a skillet. Sea slug. Nobody would be expecting that. Hermacinda crassicornis, terror of the intertidal. A silverback gorilla. He can provide close-range protection while I attack from a distance. Also, gorillas can tear the arms off a human pretty quickly, lift cars, and even cuddle kittens. Excellent. All 3 will be important in my quest for world domination. If only real animals are allowed, an elephant. If made-up animals are allowed, a demon elephant. Ancient psychic tandem war elephant. Yep, I was gonna add that. Glad I checked first. Honestly, one of the most creative fantasy creatures out there. A Cape buffalo. They're massive tanks, and they also understand the concept of revenge. Supposedly, they can remember an individual years after being wounded, threatened, and will do everything they can to hunt down and kill the person. And also, they're the closest thing to a minotaur I could have as a real-world animal. They're essentially minotaurs, but the other half is also Tor. Black panther. Lethal, stealthy, agile, badass as checks all the villain criteria. A rhino. They can flip a car with basically no effort. Hippos are basically the same, except for marine, and instead of one big horn, they have a trash compactor for a face. An African trash compactor is my new favorite name for hippos. A goose. Specifically this one goose at my local golf course I always feed crackers to when I go by the lake on the 3rd hole. He's cool with me, and I'm pretty sure he'd be down to mess up as long as I provided crackers. So your supervillain name would be Maverick. Only if he plans to eject a goat out of a jet that breaks its neck. Canadian goose. Just one is fine. Dude, it's supposed to be a sidekick, not the actual villain. This is gonna be a Sith-like situation where the apprentice offs its master. Grizzlies. They're tanks. A full-grown exemplary grizzly bear is probably worth a lot more than any who goes face to it. And they look cuddly. Why not polar? They would melt too fast. A white tiger because they look awesome. It could also camouflage and help you take over the Arctic. That place is pretty much up for grabs right now, and in a few decades will be prime real estate. Animal from Muppet Babies. He seems like he's been through a few fights. I love that you explicitly want the baby version and not like Animal from Muppets. Courage, the cowardly dog. The hero lies broken on the ground, gun pressed against their forehead. The things I do for love. Bang. You think you can just keep scaring this little pup over and over again, don't you? A crab named Citizen Snips. An elephant who never forgets. To kill. A badger with a troubled past. A raven because ravens are awesome. And then anytime it did something cool, you could say, "That's so Raven." And if it killed your enemy, you could end with, "Nevermore." Pangolin. Also, it's an adorable endangered species. Anyone who attacks it is the real villain. Pangolin use sneeze. The killer rabbit of Serbanon. Only a holy hand grenade can stop us now. Black cat. You just can't be a villain without a black cat. Modern villains tend to go with white cats. Imagine tracking the villain down to the end of a pier on a gray, rainy day. The waves are crashing and she's completely alone, out of options, nowhere to go. when suddenly she turns around and she makes a motion with her hand, and a number of Lovecraftian tentacles shoot out from the dark waters, some swirling in the air, others grabbing your companions and dragging them off the dock and into the abyss as they frantically, pleadingly try to reach out for anything to help. Only you remain. You draw your weapon. Giant squid. Does it have to be a real animal? If so, I pick a capybara. Giant guinea pig friend for life. If not, I pick a dragon. Those things can mess you up. I feel like this movie ends with the hero slaying the villain and adopting the capybara because they are so chill and everyone loves them. But the capybara slowly and subtly push the heroes towards villainy because he was the real villain all along. A velociraptor. You didn't say the animal can't be extinct. A velociraptor is roughly the size of a turkey. If you want something similar to what was seen in Jurassic Park, except even bigger, you can go with a Euthraptor. Wolverine. What's the most appealing thing about wolverines? Huge claws and teeth, super aggressive, fast moving, like a honey badger. Fictional or non-fictional? If fictional, I would choose the Chimera from the I Am Number 4 series. A shape-shifting dog would be pretty dope to have as a villain. If non-fictional, I would choose a Tintaoba. A giant slithering snake would for sure be useful in situations where I have to strike fear in people. Gonna go with polar bear or tiger. Pretty much the only animals that consider themselves above us on the food chain. I see you have never met a chihuahua. A Terescu. That is the correct answer. Yeah, until a Dragolich pops up, or maybe that's just me. A polar bear, or a honey badger. The first one because it's fearsome, the second because of the memes. A polar bear or honey badger, the first one because it's fearsome, the second because it's fearless. A cute little puppy. I would use it as a shield, and who from the good guys would hurt an innocent puppy, huh? Or wear baby armor. I thought about the baby too, but they asked for an animal, so I assumed humans are not allowed. A rat. Killed 2/3 of Europe. Actually, it was the fleas on the rats. Get yourself some villainous fleas. How about an Ebola monkey? Panther, because it's good enough for Skeletor, it's good enough for me. Flamingo. As people are confused about why there's a random flamingo running around, I would have already aimed my shot and would be ready to fire. A flamingo named Gladys. I just have this mental image of you being cornered by the good guy, and then just as he's about to shoot you, now Gladys, and your flamingo jumps at the hero, who shoots Gladys dead, but you have enough time to shoot him too. You then fall to your knees and hold your dead flamingo in your arms and scream at the sky, "Gladys, no!" Assuming I could train it well, a spitting cobra, sneaky, quiet, disruptive, and deadly when necessary. Get a sea snake. Those things make Death by Black Widow look slow and pleasant. An ordinary platypus with a fedora. Perry the platypus. I was scrolling for this answer. Bats. Bats are cute. Plus they could just fly into my enemy's mouth and bam, coronavirus. Or work as spies, or train them to drop bombs. But yeah, they adorably hang under my evil cap and fly out when I need to make a dramatic gesture. A penguin because it's cute and waddles. Gunther. Sloth. Once I capture the secret agent, I won't have to build an elaborate kill the hero slowly machine. I will just tell the sloth to stab them to death. I was thinking of a sloth as well, but just because I like to take my sweet time. I've wanted a chameleon for 14 years. If my only chance to have one is being a supervillain, then sign me the hell up. When your main objective isn't being a villain, but getting a pet. Get a chameleon, man. Follow your dreams. Eagle. Among the strongest eyes in the animal kingdom. Can spot a rabbit from 3.2 kilometers away. Will give me the best advanced warning for any approaching heroes, and I can plan accordingly. And if you get caught, the eagle can pick up a kid and you can say, "So, what will it be? Me or the kid?" I like where your mind is at with my choice.
What are some tips and tricks for arguing with idiots? Take some time to make sure you are not the idiot. This is the best advice I can think of. Nobody thinks they're the idiot. Nobody wants to believe that they're wrong, yet many of us are. The only way to correct idiocy is a personal commitment to self-reflection, education, and skepticism. I would go so far as to say that everyone is wrong a lot more than they think. Nobody's immune to being wrong, and it doesn't have to be a shameful experience if you're gracious about it. I was going to say don't, but clearly that's been covered. Then I read the last guy say, just say okay to everything and watch them self-destruct. You might actually get a little further along with this method if you implement Socratic method and just ask them questions. The point is not to get to a gotcha moment from you, but come from a place of genuine curiosity, otherwise they may get defensive if they feel they're being manipulated. Either they will wind themselves up until they figure out they really don't know what they're talking about, or you will have a better understanding of where they're coming from. Ask another idiot to argue with them. But what if they agree with each other? You politely request a third idiot, and if that idiot also agrees with them, I'd start to worry about my statement. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt and presume that you genuinely want to engage the other person, rather than just win the argument or feel superior. First, and most important thing, don't call them an idiot. No one has ever changed their mind because someone called them stupid. Quite the opposite. Calling someone stupid will make them become defensive, react emotionally rather than intellectually, and reject everything you're saying as a self-defense mechanism. Calling your opponent an idiot is great for making yourself feel better, but it's terrible for getting anyone else to listen to you. No one changes their mind because someone said they were stupid. They just convince themselves that that person is an asshole. Along those lines, attack the idea, not the person. You disagree. You aren't enemies. Discuss your problems with their belief, but try to separate it from the person themselves as much as possible. This allows the other person to distance themselves from their belief and think about what you're saying without feeling defensive. Anytime you discuss your belief, or you think that, or say anything that links your argument with them personally, or attack the person directly, you're reinforcing the idea that their belief is part of their personal identity, which for them means that they need to defend the belief in order to defend themselves. Allow your opponent to separate the belief from themselves, as this gives them room to consider whether the belief is wrong, without feeling like to do so would mean to admit that they are personally flawed. And third, listen to the other person. Don't just wait to talk, actually listen. Respond to what they are saying to show that you are listening, and ask questions without getting angry or combative. Debates turn into arguments as soon as one person starts to become heated, because that just makes the other person become heated, and it snowballs until you're both yelling at each other. Once that happens, you're both going to react emotionally rather than intellectually, and neither one of you will be receptive to the other. Overall, stay level-headed, de-escalate emotions, be respectful, and let the ideas do the work. Expect to constantly have to steer them back to the crux of the argument. Be prepared to refute any spurious sources, and to back up your own facts with genuine sources. Pick your battles, because there will be many occasions where you'll be told, we will just have to agree to differ, and that's just your opinion. Don't always expect that the idiot will understand your logic. Also, expect them to accuse you of getting angry if you put any effort into arguing with them. Think of it like playing chess with a pigeon. Chances are, the pigeon will knock over all the board and then fly back to its flock to claim victory. LOL, by the time I typed the answer, you posted it. Have my upvote. It's kinda unpopular, but be as polite and as calm as you can. Intelligent people can sometimes act like idiots when arguing with idiots. This applies to the internet as well. I find a lot of intelligent people are only perceived as being intelligent in their own field of expertise. The smart ones stick to what they know, while the dumb ones are arrogant enough to argue outside their field. Presumably, the only reason you're arguing with an idiot is that you love them. Instead of arguing, try to find common ground on something and agree not to discuss the subject further. No reason to disturb the relationship about something like an argument. If the person you're arguing with is in a position of power over you, and the argument concerns things like punishment, try to carefully lay out why you believe the punishment does not align with the action performed. Tread very lightly here, because a slip-up could very well result in more punishment. Furthermore, ensure that the subject you're discussing is something that is in fact open or logical to discuss. Try to see it from the other person's point of view, because they obviously believe that what they're doing is right for a reason. Complex imagination is a gift. Use it to your advantage in this case. Overall, idiot's gonna idiot. There's nothing you can do to solve that. But make sure that you're not an idiot back. That's something you can control. Don't speak as much as the opponent. These means don't interrupt them in the middle of a sentence, no matter how ludicrous they are. Then, rather than providing counter-arguments, ask them open-ended questions such as, "What do you mean by that?" and "Can you clarify that for me, please?" Then, after you've expended all of their ideas, you simply stay quiet. Don't sneer or ridicule, just let the moment hang in the air like fog over wetlands. The point is to let them say everything they want or need to say. Then you systematically provide counter-arguments with factual evidence. Anytime they try to interrupt, you can always say, "Excuse me, I gave you time to speak. I would appreciate it if you could do the same." They may not like it, but they cannot deny that you did indeed give them space to express themselves, and so will probably afford you the same basic courtesy you showed them. You will probably not change their mind, but at least you got them to listen, or at least quiet for long enough to present all the reasons why they are wrong. Try the following to keep things civil. Do not attack them personally. Keep the argument to the topic and nothing else. If they personally attack you, simply state the conversation is over and walk away. Do not counter their nonsense with more nonsense. Neither of you will get anything but angry at each other. Stick to the facts. Do not yell, accuse, interrupt, or anything that you would not like done to you. Civility goes a long, long way towards keeping a discussion from degenerating into an argument. Argument here meaning a verbal altercation, as opposed to its historical definition. Don't call them an idiot. They may be silly and ignorant, but the moment you give these labels is the moment the conversation closes and emotions ramp up. Nobody thinks rationally when they are angry, so avoid pushing those buttons. Stand your ground, but don't be adversarial. The point of the discussion is to debate the points, not to create an enemy. Be prepared to admit you are wrong. Your opponent may have a perspective that has never occurred to you. Try to agree where you can, and then respectfully explain why you don't agree on other points. Do not let them steamroll you. If all of the above fails, and they are needling you for no reason but to get an emotional response from you, simply walk away. You don't need to take their things. I hope this helps. Don't argue with an idiot. They will drag you down to their level and beat you with experience. I don't recall dumb people winning arguments often. They usually walk away insulting whoever decided to correct them on something. Humor them. Know the subject very, very, very well, and ask genuine questions. Take an interest in them. Let go of your grandiose right and wrong nonsense for just a single moment and see human life in front of you, with all its failings, successes, and potential. The mind can only be changed to one specific point at a time, and that point can only be successfully prevailed upon when the receiver is receiving instead of defending, the giver is giving instead of attacking. In other words, don't argue with an idiot, because arguing is for idiots. Also, you will change a million more hearts and minds by example than you will by any other tack. Source: I am an idiot. I get argued with a lot. You smart people really have no idea what you're dealing with. If you get emotionally invested, you're going to look and feel like every bit the idiot that I am. Beliefs form your value system, and your values form your opinions. Try to find out if you disagree about something fundamental, belief level, or just an opinion on an issue, value or opinion level. Two people might disagree about motorcycle helmet laws, but they both might fundamentally agree that people should wear motorcycle helmets. But if you fundamentally disagree, you're likely wasting time arguing about the opinion part of it. For example, when I feel an argument coming on, I tell the person, "Look, I believe that the Bible is the Word of God, and I base all my decisions on that. So if you don't believe that, it will be a waste of time to argue." Agreed. That's what I always say. If you build up arguments without first making sure that there's something on which by both parts agree, you're wasting time and you won't realize it until you get more and more frustrated because the argument is endless and pointless. This is not only important with idiots, but also with anybody if you're not familiar with talking to them, their general beliefs, and their beliefs on the specific subject discussed. You can't fix stupid. Walk away. Can't fix what's already broken. That's busted. The only reason you need to fix something is that it is broken. Just keep asking them questions. Make them realize they can't even explain themselves. Listen to their position. Find something you can agree with or state that you understand, and use Socratic questioning to have them provide a reason why they're wrong. Also, try to include personally relevant information. Facts can be thrown in, but they need to be gently folded in. Example, they. Poor people are taking welfare and they lie and take advantage. I'm sick of lazy people getting paid my tax money. You. Yes, I really think the government could do better with how they use tax money. Personal connection? Have you ever met someone who received government assistance? What was their situation? Oh, it sounds like they were really in a bind. Facts. I wonder how many people receive welfare. I wonder how much they get. Have you ever lived on that much money a month? Remember that they're a person too. There's a reason that they believe what they believe, even if it's ignorant. Don't view idiots as people that you need to put down. See them as people who need to be helped or taught. Point out logical fallacies in the most polite way that you can. If you're rude or mean, they're less likely to listen to you and will be more defensive. The general rule of thumb when debating with anyone is that they're more likely to listen to you if you can at least try to understand and be gentle with them. If you can't convince them, just drop it, or come back to once enough time has passed. If they ever manage to climb out of the hole they dug, they'll look back and thank you.
Ask Reddit. College professors of Reddit, what is the most genius thing you have seen a student do in one of your classes? Not a college professor, but during my Diff EQ class, my math professor told the class a story about an incredible student he had. He liked having both calculation questions, solve the difference, etc., and proofs, testing conceptual things in the class. Well, one time, this incredible student managed to prove things that were well beyond the scope of the course. She would also ask questions that suggested incredible insight into the class. He was impressed and had to see what her math background was. Well, it turned out she was a C and D student. In fact, she failed Calc 3 and got a C, I think, the second time. Her first exam also suggested that she had a very difficult time solving and applying the kinds of things learned in the course. Yet, she could prove the bonus question extremely well. He realized that she just had a hard time with applied math, but was incredibly gifted at pure math. So he went to the head of the math department and after some fighting, managed to convince the department chair to give her harder exams on the account that the exam must be approved. Well, that's what he did, and the department was astonished at the difficulty of the second exam. She could never complete this, but she did, and she got an A in the course. To this day, he and she are good friends, and she visited the class near the end of the semester. She was doing a pure math PhD. This stuck out to me. Honestly, I don't think she would have pursued mathematics, and that would have been a shame. The professor stood out to me. Not only was he an incredible teacher, but he really cared about his students. This wasn't so much genius as it was ballsy, but in the last class I taught, students were required to give a 10-minute persuasive speech about a topic. I listed some common topics from previous classes like whether college athletes should be paid, legalizing marijuana, stuff like that. They were supposed to do a little bit of research and incorporate empirical evidence into their presentations. This guy did a whole 10-minute speech, complete with a PowerPoint presentation on why one food item was better than another, similar food item. It was completely and totally irrelevant, subjective, and not related to anything the course discussed. However, the presentation was very well done. Where students often struggle with the use of filler words, improper preparation, and a flat, boring speaking voice, this student was engaging and seemingly excited about the topic. Because I use a rubric, I told him that I had to take off points for the fact that his research relied mostly on personal opinion rather than evidence. But I still gave him an A- because the actual presentation itself was well done. Honestly, it was one of the better speeches I'd heard that semester, if you don't factor in the content. I had one student who recorded my class and sold the recordings. It's funny that you say it's genius because I've literally had multiple professors put in their syllabus to not do this. I've recorded for personal use though. My property class professor had a pretty crazy note in the syllabus about the laws the class material was protected under and the legal action that would be pursued if we recorded or sold. Former TA. On an exam, a student answered a question about DNA topology with an answer that neither the prof nor I had ever seen, and it was correct. And neither of us had come up with it. And that made us have to go back and regrade the entire class's answers to that question. What was the question and what was the answer? Can a recombination fork advance in this structure? If so, how? We thought the answer was no, but it was yes, and here's how. And we, Prof and I, both did a simultaneous facepalm. Not a professor, but was taking a romantic era lit class in university. Due to some quirk of scheduling, it was twice a week, 6 to 9 p.m. We all had to do presentations for a tiny part of our grade on whatever the topic of the day was throughout the term. We were encouraged to take a very wide-ranging view of what could constitute a presentation. This prof was pretty great and actually managed to get a bunch of 20-year-olds to dress up in period costumes to read poetry to the class or to tell pulpy stories about all the banging the Byrons and or Shelleys got up to. But he was a super friendly guy who had time for everybody. Imagine the personality of Jack Black in the body of a 24-year-old Harry Potter. His day to present comes up, and the poem is Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner. At first he doesn't show. The prof goes through the preliminary matters, and then before she can ask where he is, Buddy kicks down the door to the class and struts in with somebody dressed as a fisherman and a woman in a showy prom dress. These people are not in our class. He proceeds to take a literal boombox. This is like 10 years after those stopped being a thing, to the front of the room, plug it in, and start playing the Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner metal song by Iron Maiden. We think, okay, cool, this is his presentation. No. The dear reader, this is not what happened. What happened next was a 60-plus minute reenactment of the overall story of the Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner through a Hunter S. Thompson lens. The woman is initially the guest going to a wedding whom he stops, but then terrorizes her and holds her captive with a reenactment, a presentation within a presentation, with his captain friend about how he killed an albatross in an aviary, while pressuring this captain figure into driving him around to score more drugs as things kept spiraling out of control. As this is going on, the girl at first seemed terrified of them, circles around, throws on some dark makeup, and suddenly, with everyone's attention on this weird gonzo reenactment, makes her entrance as Death and his rival from the play, lecturing them for their mortal hubris and both demanding her attention and ignoring her. The metal song stopped playing 15 minutes ago, and the whole class is caught off guard by this reversal when they thought the whole thing was wrapping up after he got to the part in his weird story about the dead bird. But she keeps going in a fury. She throws out the scene, captain and driver, and then she and he finish out the rest of the poem with the mariner receiving his curse. They must have been rehearsing for weeks. There's no reference to anything written down, and they are just living the emotional depths of this reckoning. As they draw to the end, she resumes being the woman waiting for a bus or wedding guest. They finish, take a bow, and the class is part amazed, partly confused, and just beside themselves. There is some scattered applause, then he abruptly takes his boombox, and they storm out. I never came back to the class that night. The prof takes a break, pokes her head out to look around, tries to talk about the poem, but she just can't. We've all just witnessed something together, something weird and wonderful and spellbinding. None of us put a stop to it, least of all her. There was nothing left to say about Coleridge. No presentation I have ever experienced in my educational or professional career will ever approach the time I saw a gonzo reimagining or Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner in a lit class. I'm a TA for a chemistry class. Twice a week the students have to turn in a worksheet to me, and I require them to have them stapled because of the mess it turns into otherwise. Anyway, one student made it through the class without buying a stapler because they figured out some weird origami-like way of folding the corners together in such a way that you physically could not get them unstuck without carefully undoing the folds. Now I teach it to my students and tell them if they don't own a stapler, they can just do that. Do you have a picture or something of this? Somehow it sounds like one of those awesome life hacks I want to know. Not me, but I took an intro to accounting class that was required for all business majors, where we had a teacher that was teaching his first college class ever. He said T accounts were for nerdy accounting people and wanted to show everyone how to look at the P&L and balance sheet like a business does. He would assign us things to do, and if you couldn't figure out the answer, he would tell you to reread the chapter. The answer was in there. As you could guess, a ton of kids struggled or had to cheat to get by after the first test. But then there was some kid who had taken accounting before at a different university, and the credits didn't transfer, so he was forced into this class and he knew all the answers. He hosted a homework review in the library on a whiteboard and answered any questions and helped everyone study. I think we all just learned from that dude more than the teacher. Not a professor, but a TA. We had assignments based on the daily lectures in class. Assignments were due at the end of the week, but this one student always turned his assignments in minutes after each class. I noticed on his laptop, while everyone else was taking notes on theirs, he would be filling out the assignment as the professor went through his PowerPoint. He would also ask the professor questions about the lecture that gave him the answers to the assignment. Not only was he learning from essentially taking notes, but he never had to do homework outside of class. Not the professor, I was the student, but he told me no one had ever done this before and he was impressed, so I'll share it. I had a hard time in university. Personal things, won't go into it, but it's relevant to know. I couldn't attend some lectures, and I always requested to work alone for group work due to the problems. As you can imagine, things piled up. I fell behind. Countless emails I ignored from the head of department, and I avoided seeing him for as long as I could. I was studying computer forensics. The head of the department was a nice man, but his introduction had left us all a bit weary of him. He used to be military, and in his words, he was an interrogation expert. He was a giant of a man. So we took him at his word. He told us if you're ever called to the office and he has biscuits on the table, you should be okay. But if there are no biscuits, you're probably going to get shouted at or interrogated. Anyway, when I got called in, there were biscuits on the table. He wasn't wrong about the interrogation expertise because I was very much at ease. After 5 minutes of small talk, he then removed the plates of biscuits, and my heart sank, taking me completely by surprise. I knew I was going to get lambasted for missing lectures. This was before they knew what was going on with me. I already knew before going I was going to be in trouble, but he might understand if I laid everything out for him if I had the chance. I played my hand. I unzipped my bag and took out a pack of biscuits I'd brought with me. I opened them and offered him one. He looked gazumped, like I'd one-upped him and he didn't know what to do. But it bought me 2 minutes. I told him, I know you're going to shout at me, and I really can't handle that at the moment. I'm not doing great and I'm barely holding on. Can I please talk to you before you yell at me? Or words to that effect, he allowed me to explain. After listening to me, he pulled his plate of biscuits out of the drawer and replaced them on his desk. He listened to me and understood I needed help, and referred me to the student mental health team. He later told me no one had ever thought to bring their own biscuits, and it was a smart move. He left after my second year, but from the time I spoke to him until when he left, he checked up on me monthly, asked how class was, if I needed any help, even set it up for me to take my exams in an empty classroom with just him there. Good guy. Ask Reddit. What is one thing you will never, ever do? Eat the box that my pizza came in. But that's the best part. Combine frog and dinosaur DNA to create a theme park. Also combine pig and elephant DNA. It just won't splice. Haven't you heard that Loverboy song? Imagine that the audience is naked while giving a presentation. My brain power is trying to keep the words going. I don't have cells on the side for that kind of imagination. As if I need boner fuel. SRS, I tried that, and all that happened was I got a boner. Download a car. You wouldn't kill a police officer. Then steal his helmet. Lick a public toilet. But do you have your urinal cake and eat it too? Only if the rock candy is fresh. Meth. Not even once. For anyone who is considering heroin for any reason, I urge them to go read Spontaneous H's user page and posting history. Oh my, already wasn't planning on doing heroin, but now I'm staying very, very far away from that stuff. Heroin. I was on morphine after an operation and hated it. I have negative desire to try heroin. I was given morphine at the hospital to relieve stomach ulcer pain, and the feeling was so good that I understood how people get hooked on opiates. I never tried it again because I knew I'd get hooked. Purposefully break a Lego set. A psychological horror I could never bring myself to do. Laugh my ass off, I did that when I was like 11. My mum pissed me off, so I went to my room, grabbed my Lego Star Wars Gungan sub and just dropped it on the floor, and it never got put back together. I still regret it. Become the NBA's shortest professional basketball player. Like my hopes and dreams. Also, I'm 5'1" for those who ask below. Because someone shorter than you will also make the NBA. Drink and drive. It's the worst guilty feeling ever. I truly regret the times I have done it, but PTSD and alcoholism really skew your views. Luckily, no one got injured, but I don't think I could live with myself if that happened. Trust a Sicilian when death is on the line. Inconceivable! You keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means. Run for office. The country needs you. Anyone who is capable of getting themselves made president should on no account be allowed to do the job. Fight side by side with an elf. How about with a friend? I can do that. Swim over a trench. On my second deployment on my first ship in the US Navy, we had a swim call over the Marianas Trench. It was one of the eeriest feelings I've ever experienced as I walked to the end of the stern gate and peered into the water and thinking about how far down it is. Then I jumped off into the water. Good times! Treat any retail or service employees like garbage. After working retail, I couldn't bring myself to do it. It's funny. I work with a guy and we both spent years in restaurants, and he feels that his former experience as a server entitles him to complain and send stuff back and ask for comps. I can't go to restaurants with him. Have a period. Not even in your sentence, apparently. He is a man of focus, commitment, and sheer will. Cheat on any of my GFs. I had it happen to me in a bad way in a 4-year relationship, and I know the pain. So I vowed never to do that to anyone ever. Wait, how many girlfriends do you have? And do they know about each other? Because if not... When we first started getting serious, my boyfriend told me, I'm a one-woman man, I don't cheat, and if you ever want to sleep with someone else, then just break up with me first and be on your way. That was 30 years ago, married 26 years. He still is a one-woman man, and I would never dream of breaking his heart by cheating on him. Have a man take a fat poop in my mouth. You might not have a choice. Smoke a cigarette. My grandpa smoked 3 packs a day starting when he was 12 years old until he was 50. He then quit and only smoked 2 packs a day. He lived for another decade or so before he unsurprisingly died from lung cancer. Seeing what he went through in the last few months was enough to convince me to never touch a cigarette. His lungs were so bad when the doctors diagnosed him, the doctor legitimately said, "Smoke them if you got them, because you might as well enjoy your last bit of time." I wish he could have quit for real in time for it to make a difference. My granddad died yesterday from cancer that was most likely caused by smoking. I saw him go from being really healthy big guy to as frail as Scrooge in 6 months. My mum is pissed because about 1/3 of that side of the family are being idiots and keep coming to see my grandma even though they should really be self-isolating as she is vulnerable to COVID. The thing that annoys me about all of this is watching my cousin and uncle continue to smoke even though they just watched what could happen in 6 months, and my aunt making stupid comments like, "Did you hold his hand as he went?" Like it's okay, and then going shopping with grandma trying to scavenge as much wealth as possible. It's vile. Have biological children. Too many bad genes that I would rather spare someone else from inheriting. Same here. I have cystic fibrosis. The last thing I want to do is give birth to children who simply carry the gene. I couldn't live with myself if my children end up having CF. If I do decide to be a parent one day and life is good, I'll adopt them. When another driver is trying to do me a favor that I deem safe, I'll never accept it or do it. If I do it at all, again it has to appear overwhelmingly safe without giving them a wave and saying thanks. A generally safe example, changing lanes was always a problem back when I was riding in big rigs. We sincerely appreciate the people in the lane we're merging into who see our turn signals on and flash their lights at us. This tells us, we see you, you have plenty of room, and we're not going to be the typical prick who demonstrates that they want to die by speeding up. We got you. Go ahead and get over if everything else looks good. If you do that for a trucker and they flash their lights back, that was their way of saying thanks. Same, I always wave, and I get old man disgruntled when they don't wave if I give them a driving favor. Kill someone if this whole coronavirus thing goes. I'm as the guy that dies first in the movie, the whimpering one in the corner. I feel like I could shoot someone, but there's no way I could bludgeon someone to death with something like a hammer or a baseball bat. I have a hard enough time even bonking a fish. Same, I accidentally stepped on a mouse and killed it when I was like 10. I still feel terrible about it over 20 years later. Bungee jump. A broken rubber brought me into this world, and I'm sure as hell not gonna let one take me out. It is seriously the best adrenaline rush ever. I ended up doing it twice, to clarify. Bungee jumping, not breaking a rubber. The adrenaline rush from the rubber breaking comes a couple of months later when you hear, "I'm pregnant." Fair, but I'm happy being at home playing video games. My heart already races when I get a big boss in them. Wouldn't want that feeling amplified by like a quadrillion. Thanks. I'll never have sex. I'll never do anyone. I'll never lose my virginity because I don't lose. You're the winner of life, but not natural selection. Become president, according to my 12th grade English teacher. The same thing happened when I was in year 8. I asked him if he always dreamt of being a PE teacher. Kill me. I wouldn't want to take that kind of pleasure away from someone else. You say that, but remember the person statistically most likely to kill you is you. Sometimes the smart choice is to get that bastard first. Marry for money. A lot of people asking me why not, because I get approached by rich douches who think I can be bought. I'm not marrying for anything other than love. Period. This dude must already have money, which means I must marry them. Be mean to my mom. Intentionally hurt someone in a major way. I think making other people sad or angry makes me even more sad or angry at myself. If I had coins, I'd give you the Wholesome Award. I hope this will do. Cut off my testicles with a rusty knife in the middle of a desert. Are you sure about that? I could never have a rusty knife. I'd have to polish and sharpen it. Be intimate with someone unless I have a genuine emotional connection. Me too. The little guy doesn't get excited about the emotional layer. I will never, for any reason, do anything to anyone for any reason ever, no matter what, no matter where or who I'm with or where I'm going or where I've been ever, for any reason whatsoever. Sometimes I'll start a sentence and don't even know where it's going. I just hope I find it along the way, like an improv conversation, an improvisation. Beat the game. I've gone years since my last reset. Years. There are no resets, only losers. Never have sex with another lad's woman. If she cheats with you, she'll cheat on you, and vice versa to be fair. That thing will come back to haunt you. People who cheat are likely to do it again. I tried to explain this to one of my friends who got with a girl while she was in a relationship. Lo and behold, she cheats on him, and he says they'll give it another chance. I wish he would respect himself more. Give you up, let you down, turn around or desert you. Will you make me cry? Will you say goodbye? Go on a cruise. I have zero interest in one of those boats with 4,000 plus people. Screw that. Even before the virus, I had zero interest. However, a European river cruise with 100 to 200 people max sounds pretty cool to me. My parents went on one and they had a great time. It's a cool way to see a lot of Europe and not get bored with one city. Not falling for this one. I always end up doing the things I swear off, like sex before marriage, getting fat, and doing cocaine. The trick is to think of a good-ass reason why not. If you're in the moment and you arbitrarily denounced whatever you're about to do, what is there to stop you but that one strong thought? Hold a tarantula, but you can sell them for 8,000 bells each. Cheat on someone. Granted, I'm sure quite a load of people who ended up doing so said this to themselves. But beyond the moral grounds of it being wrong, the thought of doing so and going back to your SO, dropping the news, watching their reaction, and realizing you've made someone that close to you completely lose trust in you sounds absolutely miserable. And I certainly wouldn't want to be on the other end of that situation either. Cutting my head for an immortal vampire that stole his rival's body. Never will I ever get near a staircase with either a stripper with multiple personalities at the bottom or a bisexual vampire at the top. None of that, thanks. AskReddit. What's a big industry secret that isn't supposed to be known by the general public? Part 2. Your children tell us nearly everything about what goes on in your home. Source: preschool teacher. Thanks for all the upvotes and replies. Cracking up reading some of these. I taught preschool for nearly 10 years. I can confirm. We had a cop visit our school one day. He was the father of one of the teachers. He talked about being good, law-abiding citizens and asked if there were questions at the end. I learned a lot that day about some of the families at our school. Some were a little too familiar with the police. Merlin Entertainments, the company that runs a wide variety of midway attractions like Legoland Discovery Centers as well as Legoland itself, pays most of their American employees less than Walmart. Oftentimes, employees love the job, but ultimately can't afford to keep it. This causes a near 90% turnover rate. This is just about everywhere in the entertainment industry. The general rule of thumb: if the job is low skill and fun, it won't pay much because it's super easy to replace people. The other side of this same principle also explains why actuaries make so much money. Adblock does a better job of keeping malware away than antivirus. uBlock Origin plus NoScript plus Unchecky plus Malwarebytes antivirus scan every other day is what I prescribe everybody who has problems with viruses. NoScript and uBlock keep you from clicking fishy things. Uncheck stops you from installing toolbars. Malwarebytes kills everything which still got through. Mr. Clean magic erasers are just melamine sponges in a fancy box with a fancy label. They retail for about $1 a sponge. $6.50 per 8-pack is a sale price. You can get a 100 pack on eBay for $4.99. Free shipping. I've bought those sponges before. The only complaint is that they tend to break a little too easy, but still work just fine. Not in the casino industry, but I am in the fire service and we learn things like this. Casinos will pump an extra 1% of oxygen into the air to make you more alert and give you more energy, which allows you to stay there longer and spend more money. It's also the reason casino fires can be so catastrophic. Working in the gaming industry and can confirm. They pump other things out too, like pleasant beachy smells of coconuts. Some are more obvious than others. Ask to have the late fee waived. I literally cannot do anything with it until you specifically ask. So you have a late fee of $30 on this. Gee, that's a lot. Why is it so much? That's the late fee we have. I do apologize for that inconvenience. Well, I guess I'll have to pay for it then. Okay, so your bill is $150. Do you realize how much that is? Yes, and I do apologize for the inconvenience. Well, can you do something about it? Yes, now I can because you asked. Please stop making me feel guilty that you paid your bill late. I had this happen with my power company. The bill was due 1 week before my paycheck, and in the summer months was always in flux, so I could never budget it properly or I would under-budget it. It was my first year living in this particular condo. So I finally called up after having my service disconnected twice. Look, I'm having trouble meeting this payment schedule. Is there any way I can pay an extra amount to prorata into next month's bill or something so I can offset the payments by a week? No, but we could just move your due date back by a week. Okay, that works too. I work for a web design development agency in Canada. Clients think they pay us to do the work. The reality? We charge anywhere from $5,000 to $200,000 plus for web projects. We take 90% of those projects and outsource them to India for $200. The projects come back built so poorly, we spend months fixing them. The CEO laughs to the bank. I don't agree with the process, but that's why I quit and start a new job next week. The projects come back built so poorly, we spend months fixing them. Wouldn't it be easier to just build them yourself at this point? Rocket science is like 90% plumbing. Well, it's hardly brain surgery. On the other hand, brain surgery isn't exactly rocket science. Our printing department printed your t-shirts wrong, and right now they're filling in the missing ink spots with Sharpies. I used to work at a t-shirt printing place. If it was small enough, we'd do it. We had Sharpies of all colors, but black was obviously the easiest. Security guards are underpaid and usually undertrained. That guy standing in front of the bank with the shiny gun, the guy some of you might expect to protect you if you're being robbed. He makes about $1 or $2 more than minimum wage, depending on what city you're in. The contracts for these jobs are insane. Sometimes it's hundreds of dollars per hour per guard. The actual person on the ground, in an industry that has very little overhead, makes very little money. Not only that, but they are usually used to do tasks that an employee from the company they're hired by won't do. For instance, guards at a unionized building will be required to fill in the gaps like emptying the trash or some other nonsense task. Oh, and if something security related happens while the officer is doing a said nonsense task, that officer is bound to get into trouble. It's a bad game, but companies love having the cheap labor wrapped in a scapegoat. Director of security for a company that rhymes with Uitas. Poultry industry. When hatched, a chick costs 25 US cents. Over its lifespan of only about 30 days, it consumes about $1 of feed, which is the largest cost to the company. The feed. No steroids or anything, just clever selective breeding have created birds with oversized breasts, which is where the money is. Within 3 hours, a bird is killed, defeathered, eviscerated, and chilled down to under 40 degrees Fahrenheit, which is the magical degree at which microbial growth slows or stops. The chilling process takes the longest, nearly 2 hours in super chilled water. That's where the up to 5% retained water comes from. Certain companies add chemicals to promote more water retention. Every carcass is USDA inspected, every single one. Foster Farms has the capacity to process 2 million chickens each day, and they're not even in the top 3 poultry manufacturers. After chilling, the birds are then cut up and packaged, except the breast meat, which is aged, which is a fancy term for holding them for at least 16 hours to continue to retain water. That is sold at a premium, so more water equals more money. Chicken is good for up to 16 days, depending on if the cold chain has been maintained, kept under 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Very little is left to waste. The feet are mostly shipped to China. They can't get enough of them. Blood is used in fertilizer. Feathers are often ground up and fed back to the birds. Look for packaging that reads vegetarian diet or no animal byproducts to avoid that silent green thing. You use too much Dawn dish soap. That stuff is ridiculously concentrated. Obligatory highest rated comment edit. Don't tell me what I can top my flan with. That's the dirtiest sounding non-dirty thing I've ever read. Oftentimes the on-air personality you're listening to on the radio isn't actually live. Many tend to pre-record beforehand so they can either laze around recording commercials or do other work. I was amused while driving one time, listening to a relatively corporate rock station, and then they played the DJ, who introduced a song. Then, rather than playing the song, it played 2 DJ intros over the top of each other. Then, rather than music, continued playing DJ intros, chatter and bumpers overlapping each other for like 5 minutes, including things like "it's 10 to 5, but it was only 3 something." And then there was silence for a few seconds, and then it played music uninterrupted for a long time, except for station identification, which must be automated on a different system. Blew through 2 hours of a DJ's hard work in 5 minutes. Grocery store bakeries do not bake the cakes they decorate. That stuff comes in frozen. I can't bake you a carrot cake. On top of that, most of the baking in grocery store bakeries are just pulling frozen pastries or muffins or whatever out of a box, panning it up, and putting it in the proofer or oven. We don't really make things anymore. A friend of mine is a bakery girl for a supermarket. When I worked there, I'd spend half my shift on dead nights talking to her while she puts little frozen bagels or rolls out for the morning crew to bake. They all come in little frozen boxes nowadays. If something comes in fresh, it's a limited special and costs probably 3 times as much. Midway games at carnivals or fairs purposefully let people win early on in the day. This way people carry around the prizes and advertise them for the rest of the day. Guess I should mention I volunteered at my local fair for several years. Midway game attendants use misinformation through internet forums to get people to play their carnival games early in the day during their biggest downtime. Record labels and producers sometimes use ghost vocalists for pop stars who really can't sing. Ghost vocalists are like singing impressionists who come into the studio and re-sing the song in the style of the pop star, but better. Often the pop stars in question don't even know that their vocals have been replaced. Oh, and for the record, no pun, terrible singers can't be fixed with autotune. It is only used to polish slightly untidy vocals. This is why ghost vocalists are used. I know an engineer who would routinely re-record guitar parts himself after the band left because it sounded sloppy and he didn't want his name attached to it. I played the bass parts for 2 or 3 re-recorded tracks he did because the bass player demanded he use his amp and his setting, but it sounded absolutely muddy. Every programmer in the world occasionally writes a very bad code that sticks with the app or program forever. You can also guarantee that code doesn't have any comments either. That one, or the best comment I've seen, something along the lines of, "Don't even try to understand something in the following lines, move on." I work in the trucking industry, and it's frightening how much food product is sold and resold after being rejected. Had a customer have a load of cheese refused because it was too warm, but took it back to another warehouse, cooled it down, and resold it to another customer. I've seen it done with cheese, juice, meat, and seafood. Only seen it done about 4 to 5 times out of 10,000 plus loads I've moved, but that is still too high. Same here, most people would be shocked at how much of a beating freight takes. I also know which electronic products not to buy because of the number of returns we ship. AskReddit. What's a big industry secret that isn't supposed to be known by the general public? I work at a hospital in an area where there are lots of hospitals. Our ER has an EMT lounge with free slushies, soda, and snack food, so the EMT chooses our hospital when delivering patients. Can confirm, of the 4 hospitals we run to, there is only one that is the universal favorite. They have the best snacks and hottest ER nurses. They know it. They're shameless. If you get in a car accident and your insurance tries telling you that you have to or that you should take your car to a specific repair facility to get repaired, tell them to go fist themselves. You have no obligation to any insurance company or repair facility. You can take your car to any body shop you like to have the repairs done, and it's against the law for insurance companies to tell you that you can't. However, they often use tricky wording to make you feel like you have no say, especially if you are a woman. Source: estimator and parts manager for a body shop. Customer service text chat can see what you're typing in the box before you hit send. Is this real? Yes, it's so they can start looking up what you need faster. Relative of mine was a mystery shopper and did a lot of car garages. He would get sent in with the car and had to get it serviced and reported on how well it was completed, or if they found all the faults, or if the customer service was up to scratch, etc. The results were usually 6 out of 10, until suddenly every garage was a 10 out of 10 continuously. He investigated, as it was a bit suspicious, and found MYS, mystery shopper, written on the bottom of the car he was given. One of the garages had sussed him out and wrote it there for future garages to find and make sure they have the best possible service. Write MYS, the mystery shopper, on the bottom of your car when you get it serviced to ensure it gets the best possible service. This generally refers to large car garages such as Skoda and Seat, who work on their own model cars for their customers. Going to your local mechanic around the corner, he isn't going to expect a mystery shopper anytime soon. It's more the corporate garages who hire MYSs. McGraw-Hill makes practically every textbook allowed in America's school. At the end of every year, they throw away the tens of thousands of books for the tax write-off because it's going to a recycling plant. I'm talking textbook for K through 12, college books of every tape, teachers' editions and class sets of short stories and books for kids in process of learning to read. A normal textbook costs the school $60 to $80 a pop, but they throw away enough to educate every child in Africa. When I worked at the recycling plant, I wasn't allowed to take them because it was considered illegal to distribute them. I truly lost all hope for the future of humanity after that, and quit my job. The place they're sent to is called Medina Recycling in Northeast Ohio. I seriously want to find a way to make this big news and trash McGraw-Hill over it. It's also a 2-month period that is Medina Recycling's largest contract for a profit. In sofa couch commercials, they use smaller actors or models to make the sofas or couches look bigger. I attended a songwriting workshop at Berklee Schools of Music, and Anna Wise, a Grammy-winning songwriter, Kendrick Lamar collaborator, told the audience during a presentation that whenever someone magically blows up on SoundCloud or YouTube, that it's not authentic. A label will sign the artist in secret and then suddenly boost their viewership tremendously to make it look like the independent artist did it on their own. I mentioned this in my post. Also, there are some clever tricks out there to make artists seem more independent than they are. The band Paramore was first signed to Atlantic, one of the biggest major labels ever, but their albums were released on indie label Fueled by Ramen in order to make them seem more punk or DIY. A bottle of Windex is basically 95% water, 4% ammonia, and 1% blue dye or fragrance. The most expensive part of the product is the bottle. So should I just go to Ace and buy ammonia and mix my own? Buy a tin of denatured alcohol and use that plus water for all your glass cleaning needs. Also, any metal cleaning you need, it's basically the main component in razor cleaning station solution. Just wear gloves when dealing with it in the buff. The stuff's nasty. Lots of people mentioning vinegar. That's okay for windows, but don't do that if you're refilling razor cleaning solution cartridges with it. Go straight alcohol for the grease breaking and evaporative properties. Do not dilute. The fresh chocolate chip cookie scent that can be smelled outside of the Magic Kingdom bakery is artificial. It's piped out there to draw you into the bakery. They're called smellitizers. They're like targeted scent cannons. Disney also cranks the AC up in the shops in the wintertime so it feels colder than it actually is, and you think to yourself, man, I better get that Mickey sweatshirt or I'm gonna be freezing all day. My sister was on The Biggest Loser. Jillian and Bob were there too, maybe 3 days a week. They make it seem like they live there. I was a contestant on The Biggest Loser. This is a fact. We mostly spend our days working out by ourselves or with sub-trainers that the celebrity trainers send in. I took her sister's name out of my comment. Not my place to throw that information out there. If you get involuntary bumped from a flight, you can get paid out 200 to 400% of the flight's cost back, depending on how late you get to your destination. If this happens to you, they'll offer you a bunch of vouchers, but be persistent and they'll pay you out. If the airline arranges substitute transportation that is scheduled to arrive at your destination between 1 and 2 hours after your original arrival time, between 1 and 4 hours on international flights, the airline must pay you an amount equal to 200% of your one-way fare to your final destination that day, with a $650 maximum. If the substitute transportation is scheduled to get you to your destination more than 2 hours later or 4 hours internationally, or if the airline does not make any substitute travel arrangements for you, the compensation doubles. 400% of your one-way fare, a $1,300 maximum. When a flight is overbooked, they come over the PA and start handing out a few $100 vouchers and put you on the next flight. If you take one of these vouchers, you have voluntarily given up your seat. If no one takes them the first round, they keep on going up in voucher amounts. But eventually, if no one takes them, they're going to have to involuntarily bump people off the plane. If this happens to you, make sure you follow the above rules. Personally, in my experience, I had an SWA flight from Phoenix to Chicago on the 23rd of December at 10 a.m. They came over the PA offering a $300 voucher and a spot on the next flight. I had nothing special to do except hang out with my family, so I took it, and they put me on the 12 p.m. flight. 30 minutes before boarding that flight, the same thing happens. Well, I'll take another $300, and they put me on the 3 p.m. flight. Guess what? It happens again, but this time they give me $500, and I'm on the 6 p.m. flight. And you guessed it, they asked for volunteers again, and I got another $500, and now I'm on the 8 p.m. flight. So I spent a day in the airport, sampled all the great dining options at Sky Harbor, and ended up with $1,600 in SWA credits to use over the next year. I was able to go on 3 trips with my girlfriend without paying for flights. Moving forward, if I ever travel before Thanksgiving or Christmas, I'm booking the earlier flight and racking up the vouchers. If your flight is cancelled due to weather or mechanical issues, you are SOL. Expect them getting you on the next available flight. Flights are frequently cancelled when there aren't enough seats sold, and most of the times the airlines say it was a mechanical problem, so they don't have to give you anything. Former Dunkin' employee here. We don't check the survey codes at the bottom of your receipt. Any random 5 digits in the space, you've got a free donut with a purchase. Worked back when Sonic would give you a free Route 44 drink with purchase. Then you got another free Route 44 drink with the receipt of your free Route 44. Such a great summer that was. Not in before 20 people say I have diabetes. Rip me, I guess. I had no clue. At Subway, my manager never once bought real mayonnaise. The light mayo and the real mayo are both light mayo. Investigate those guys. When I was in college, the Subway near my school used to always put 5 slices of turkey on a large sub instead of 6, which is the standard at any other restaurant. I have pretty intense OCD, so this drove me crazy. The responses from the staff varied. Some would try to charge me for extra meat, while others would just give me what I wanted so I'd shut up. But one guy actually said, "My manager told me to do this." I was stunned. This was an actual directive from a manager to deceive customers. My friend and I made a spreadsheet trying to calculate the amount of money the owner was saving per year by withholding that extra slice. And it was insignificant. We thought about writing an email to the local newspaper titled Turkeygate, or trying to make a big deal out of it on a campus somehow. But this was in the pre-social media days, and we were mostly unmotivated college students at the time, so we just forgot about it and I stopped eating at Subway. My local Subway used to withhold meat for mad profits. Count your slices. As a call center employee, I can assure you that all of our calls are recorded, not for training purposes, but to protect our own asses. Fair enough, but sometimes it also protects the customer. I had a dispute with AT&T over a DSL contract a number of years ago. I believe they changed the terms on me, and they said I'd verbally agreed to the changes. I told them I would happily abide by the new terms if they could play back the recording. I agreed to them. They called back the next day and released me from my contract. Patient confidentiality just means your name isn't in the story, not that your story won't get told. My grandmother used to work in a hospital, and she would tell us all kinds of stories about the patients, although she did tell us that she would never give out names. Not sure if this is an industry practice, but a very popular online retail company in my country has no in-house web designers or any other IT staff beyond your generic networking techs. Anytime their website or back-end systems need work, They simply advertise a permanent position and give the job of sorting out whatever they need to be done as a trial for the candidate. Once completed, they then inform them that the position is no longer available and send them on their way. They've been doing this for years. Name and shame so our devs can tell them to go swivel. I've got a plumber's, a mate got it for me. I've got no idea how to clean it. I'd also like to know a bit more about how it was made. Ask Reddit. What's the worst thing to wake up to? Part 2. Artillery. Had that happen too, especially when you don't expect it. I went on a long weekend with wifey to a rental and arrived in the dark. Apparently it was next to a military firing range, and at 8 a.m. the next morning a dozen howitzers fired rounds. Yourself as a student in underwear in front of the entire second grade, and everyone is laughing at you. This happened to me in kindergarten, minus the dream part. My nana and mom made me wear these overalls I didn't like to school. I was a little teacher, which meant I sat next to the teacher in my own rocking chair in front of everyone. I stood up, my overalls had unclasped and fell down to my ankles. I will never forget it. Your partner who died in their sleep next to you. This to me is the worst thing I could possibly wake up to. This happened to the husband of a couple I had known and loved for years. I met them when the wife was dating a friend of mine, and the husband was friends with the guy that the wife was dating at the time. The original relationship amicably dissolved, and all parties were close friends for years. Everyone was happy when the two longtime friends fell in love and got married. Then one morning she was gone. She died in her sleep next to her husband. As someone who has finally found the love of my life and has many plans for the future, it's the most devastating thing I can think of. 2 a.m. smoke detector battery chirp, and you have 7 smoke detectors on 10-foot high ceilings, so you have to get a damn ladder out of the garage at 2 a.m. in the morning. Change your batteries on a schedule to avoid that. A few months prior, we had upgraded our smoke alarms to be compatible with our alarm system. I woke up to chirping, which was upsetting the dogs, so not only did I have smoke alarm chirps, I had crying dogs. I'm pissed because I'm thinking the batteries are only going to last 3 months in the new ones. I checked the app to see which one was low, but the app is showing the battery status as good on all of them. Great, the app doesn't work either. I paced around trying to find the right one to replace, and after 4 or 5 chirps in total, I'm not hearing anything. I'm 99% sure it was coming from the one closest to the kitchen, but the low battery light isn't on. I replaced the battery so I don't have to worry about being woken up again. About 2 weeks later, I'm pan-searing some steaks and the fire alarm goes off. I go to snatch up my phone, anticipating having to turn off the alarm app to avoid the fire department from being called, but nothing. My dumbass then realizes that I had set the old alarm on our junk counter and other clutter had gotten set on top of it. The old one was going off, and it's likely the old one was the one chirping. I don't know why it stopped chirping that night, but for whatever reason, it did. Now on the plus side, batteries in the new alarms do still last about a year, and the app does warn you when they're getting low. A gun pointed inches away from your face. Story time. When I was around 21, I had a night of binge drinking with my roommate, and we drank until 6 or 7 in the morning. The house next to us, being upset about us being up all night, called the cops on us around 7 to say they heard gunfire. Now, we weren't blasting the music too loud, because when I went to the backyard throughout the night to let the dogs pee or go join them for a pee in the yard, what do you expect? I was drunk. The music was not notable more than a foot away from the house. A few times my roommate went out back to smoke a cigarette, and I joined him to continue our conversation while he smoked, and the music wasn't audible then either. Anyway, I finally got a great idea. I wanted to wash my car, so I slowly drove it down the driveway which leads to the side of the house, and opened the gate to the backyard so I could use the hose in the backyard. This seemed easier to me than finding a hose out the garage and connecting it to a picket in the front of the house, and maybe waking up the neighbors by washing my car at 7 in the morning. I went inside to grab a bucket, soap, and sat down for another beer and passed out on the couch. Next thing I know, I feel my roommate tapping me on the nose. I'm in that half state of drunk and asleep and can't be bothered to tell him to get off because I'm sleepy. Again, I get tapped on the nose and shaken a little, being told to wake up. Again, I say, get out, let me sleep. This time I hear, wake up and step outside, now! As I slowly open my eyes, blurry, and they begin to adjust, I see a handgun inches from my nose. Everything else is still blurry as the handgun comes into focus. I think, why is my roommate pointing a gun at me? As I focused more, I see past the gun and notice a uniform and a badge comes into focus. Again now I hear, wake up and get outside. It was this cop who was trying to wake me as my roommate was sitting in our backyard handcuffed and 8 policemen were in my house, all drawn guns. I slowly get up and say, okay, as they roughly take me to the back and handcuff me as well and sit me on the concrete in the backyard. They continue to clear the house, dogs wandering the backyard staying near me, and all the cops around us kept asking, where are the guns? My roommate did have a gun cabinet with a few shotguns and rifles, so he tells them in his room he had a cabinet. The cops then kept yelling about the handgun. Where is the handgun? We didn't have one. Now mind you, I'm drunk, half asleep, and still confused, so I'm asking how they get in the house. Why are they here? I'm told to sit still and keep quiet. Once the house is cleared and they check us for guns, I asked them if I could put my dogs inside so they wouldn't run out the backyard because they had our side gate wide open. They were nice enough to let me tell the dogs to go to the other side of the yard where I had kennels for them and then locked them in there. Started asking us about the handguns again, saying a neighbor reported hearing lots of gunfire, probably from a handgun coming from our house. I said no, we've been drinking, but no handguns here. They kept up the questions, asking why I had my car in the backyard. If I wasn't trying to hide something, why is the car in the backyard? I say I was going to wash it, which they looked at me like, why not just wash it in the front like normal people? You're trying to hide something. Where are the keys to the car so we can search for it? At this point, I just wanted them out, and I knew I had no guns in the car, so I tell them. They check the car. The rest of the house again gets tossed around, but no handguns. Just the guns in the cabinet, which were unloaded. They break out some powder to put on the guns to see if any had been fired recently. They hadn't. So they gave us a warning about firing weapons in a residential neighborhood, to which I say, are they sure it was us? May have been another house. They say no chance. Your next door neighbor here said he clearly heard it coming from this house. Okay, but we don't have handguns. Only rifles and shotguns will make completely different sounds, and none of them have been fired in a while. They finally leave, and in the drunk state, I have to clean up the house they turned and tossed around. Asked my roommate what happened, if he had shot any of them while I was passed out. He said once I passed out, he got on the kitchen phone to call for pizza delivery and kept getting pissed that none were open yet, when he noticed someone walking in our backyard. He opens the door to ask who the hell was in our backyard and was greeted by the SWAT team that promptly slammed him on the ground and began to run through the house. And that's when I was woken up by one of them with his gun pointed inches away from my face. A neighbor called the cops on us firing guns, so the SWAT team came out and woke me up with this handgun a few inches from my nose. A doctor. This would depend on if you saw the doctor before you fell asleep. The cops banging on your door. This happened to me once. They had the wrong address. Scared the living daylights out of me. I had a nightmare where I was covered in ants. I woke up and relieved that it was just a dream. Then I realized I was actually covered in ants. Oh man, I had forgotten about that time I woke up covered in ants and you just reminded me. I can attest to this. It is a freaking nightmare to be woken up this way. Totally traumatized 8-year-old me. To the sound of the cars. I live near a big road with lots of traffic and it's just awful. At 5 a.m, already awake because of it, and this is happening every single day. Same, lived here 7 years and never got used to it. It's also straight away and every bag with a souped up Honda or Mustang has to floor it. There's also railroad tracks with a switch at the lumber yard about a quarter mile through the woods. The train echoes through the woods and shakes my house. Never mind when it just sits there idling for hours. Waking up dead. Sorry boss, I can't come today. I'm dead. Well, that's not an excuse. See you at 9. I see you too have experience working in retail. a bat on the ceiling. Don't worry, in America, you can just sell your car to pay for the rabies shots. Or yourself. A wet bed. I woke up to this every night until I was 9. Thanks, genetics. I woke up to 3 firemen banging on my door to my apartment room, hopped out of bed into a pool of water, instantly realized what was going on and ran into my bathroom to turn off the tub and sink. I opened the door to those firemen, and my roommate, with his hands over his head, looked around to see my apartment flooded. I slept-walked and turned on the bath and my sink. Your phone says it's 2 minutes until your alarm goes off. Isn't this a good thing? This means you woke up naturally and usually are much less tired. I hate it because when I realize my alarm hasn't gone off yet, I get all excited thinking I have time to fall back asleep for a while, which is the greatest feeling in the world. Only to be let down moments later when I actually look at the clock and realize I actually have to get up. Call from your teacher, wondering where you are for your final state-run exam in high school. Aperture. Well, something like that, the Czech version of it. There is only one set date, statewide, and if you miss it, you have to repeat it in September, and there's almost a certainty you won't make it to university in the same year. About an hour after it's officially finished, people from the education ministry come pick up the papers, and then there's nothing you can do about it. I was woken up by the call from my teacher wondering where I was at the time it was starting. The thing is, my high school was about 45 minutes from my home. I rushed in, finished the missing part after every other student went home due to being teacher's favorite. For once it paid off, and saw the people from ministry getting to the building just when I was leaving. I was just on my way to buy a huge bouquet for my teacher. I graduated with honors. Here we are, 7 years later, and I still have the lightest of nights of sleep when there's anything important coming up in the morning. Crying children. When I was younger, and me and my baby brother shared a room, in the middle of the night he started crying. My mum came down in the room, and when she left he stopped crying. A few minutes later, my brother starts crying again, and I think of what could make him be quiet. Then for some reason I think, hey, the TV makes me be quiet. So then I ask my brother if he wants to watch TV, and of course he says yes. So we go out to the living room and turn on the TV, and I'm thinking, watch an episode or two, then leave him and go to bed. The TV was on the input where it's all staticky, and we didn't know how to change it. So as little kids, we started screaming our heads off, turned off the TV, then ran back to bed. Neither of us slept for the rest of the night. AskReddit. What's the worst thing to wake up to? Part 1. Someone yelling at you. It can ruin a whole day. I worked with a kid who experienced this often. He would come to school out of sorts and anxious. Little things would set him off at school and he would lash out. He would be punished, labeled a bad kid, sent home to this anxiety-inducing household again with parents who were angry at him. Poor kid was prepared to fight or flight most of the day, and of course, with all of that going on, he was learning nothing and getting behind in his class, which made him more anxious because he didn't want to look stupid. A call from work wondering where I've been all morning. That pit in your stomach when you wake up, look at your phone and see you're hours late for work, from ready to pass back out to instant anxiety-fueled adrenaline in 0.2 seconds. And then you realize it's your day off, but you're already wide awake and there's no way you're getting back to sleep. A tornado alarm. This is so scary. Especially at 3 a.m. while you're in a tent and the nearest tornado shelter is a 10-minute walk through the woods in a thunderstorm. This exact scenario happened with me as well. Police. I woke up to police chasing a guy through our yard. He tripped over the bikes I had leaning against the house right where my bedroom is. That's the only reason the cops got him. There was so much yelling and threats to shoot until finally the guy cooperated. That was like Jan 2nd. The same thing happened to me, except the dude being followed by the cops was my underage brother who stole my grandma's truck and freaked when police tried to pull him over for going too slow. He crashed into the house. Thank God I was getting a cup of water at 2 a.m. Otherwise I'd be crushed by the caving in the wall. The end of that dream where you really need a pee and start to feel the satisfaction of warming release. I had a dream once that I had to pee bad. And so I went into the bathroom in my dream and saw a urinal. So I was like, let's go! Anyways, I started peeing and it's just a waterfall of piss. Like, have you ever bought a really big drink and just drank it all in an hour and then had to pee? And you're peeing so much that you have to stop the full stream for a second so that you can full stream again. That's exactly how it was, but it was just never ending. This kept going for what felt like 15 minutes until I woke up and thankfully I hadn't pissed in the bed. I don't know how I was able to hold it in through peeing so much in my dreams, but it was a relief. Your dog gagging and about to throw up in the middle of the night, then hearing him eating it 15 seconds later. Sounds like the problem solved itself. But alas, I have no coins left to give. Sigh. Hearing a throwing up noise. I was probably in the 4th grade at the time, and I was staying the night at my friend's house sleepover. I remember being super excited as her mom went all out and got us junk food to pig out on and movies to rent. We ate a ton of peanut M&Ms. I went to bed and I woke up to the noise first, and then the smell hit me. Peanuts, chocolate, Doritos, and the vomit smell. She had one of those day beds and I was on the pullout at the bottom. I do not know how she missed me, or how I didn't step in any of it on my way out of the room to get to her mom. There was a spot at the top of my head and the bottom of my feet, and all over her bed. Her mom asked me, "Do you want to go home?" Yes, I'll call my mom. Took me a long time to eat peanut M&Ms. Started 2020 to that sound. Cat vomited on our bed. I knew it wasn't a good omen for the year. I got woken up by my dad early in the morning to inform me that my mother had passed away in the room across the hall from me. The worst part was that she was only sleeping there to look after a pup that was recently born from the 2 dogs we had at the time. Otherwise, my dad might have woken up and been able to do something about it. The pup ended up crying late at night before or during her heart failure that I ended up passing off, as it's not really that uncommon, but it really makes me question if I could have done something or not to help her before it happened. I think about it regularly. Calling work and breaking down to my PO's boss wasn't great either, but hey, bad day. Sorry for your loss. Stay strong. I was babysitting my niece one time when she was about 4. I packed her off to bed and went to watch a movie on the couch where I promptly dozed off, only to be woken a few hours later in complete darkness, having no idea where I was and with a tiny, clammy little demon hand grabbing at my ankle. I've never been awake faster in my life, only to be greeted by a very confused child who just wanted a story, and who no one had seen fit to tell me could get over the baby gate like a damn ninja. We don't tell her mother about the time Aunt Hazel almost kicked her darling daughter through a window. Mine is very similar, but also the opposite. When I was 18, I would regularly visit my sister, who lives about 2 hours away. I would usually stay for the weekend, babysit my infant niece, and they could have a chance to go out. This particular time, I dozed off on the couch. I woke up in a blur around midnight, and I realized I didn't have the baby monitor. I went upstairs and saw the baby's door was open. I tiptoe in, and the crib is empty. I full-on panic, ran around yelling, checking all the rooms and doors, all still locked. I find my phone and there's a text from my sister. Dog meds are in the window by the sink. 1/2 pill AM. Finally remembered that I'd come that weekend to take care of their dog, while they, baby included, went to Ohio. I have never been so relieved in my entire life. Your house burning down? Had this happen once when I was in middle school. It wasn't burning down completely, but the bathroom caught fire. I had to scramble out of bed and grab the super stubborn dog and get out fast. Waking up in an ice bath with a missing kidney and blood all over the place. Don't want to know how you thought of this one. Once I woke up to find my dog had diarrhea everywhere. Large puddles on the floor and also in between the side of my bed and the wall. It was completely inside the outlet. I literally had to shut off the electricity and rewire a new outlet that day. Sunlight. I work the early morning shift, and I'm already driving to work before the sun even comes up. A couple of times my phone has ended up under my pillow, and I've missed my alarm only to wake up to the sun glaring in my eyes. That sudden feeling of messing up always sucks. Yeah, I remember those days of waking up before dawn. If I woke up to sunlight, then I immediately knew I messed up, and with a jolt of energy, hop out of the bed. Fever, sore throat, shortness of breath. Just go back to sleep. 2020 is all but a dream. It genuinely feels like everything since the first week of January 2016 has been what you'd get from someone trying to run an improv show in an asylum that's also on fire. Hey, you're finally awake. You were trying to cross the border, right? Walked right into that Imperial ambush, same as us, and that thief over there. Damn you, Stormcloaks! Skyrim was fine until you came along. Empire was nice and lazy. If they hadn't been looking for you, I could have stolen that horse and been halfway to Hammerfell. You there? You and me. We shouldn't be here. It's these Stormcloaks the Empire wants. We're all brothers and sisters and binds now, thief. Shut up back there. And what's wrong with him, huh? Watch your tongue. You're speaking to Ulfric Stormcloak, the true High King. Ulfric? The Jarl of Windhelm? You're the leader of the rebellion. But if they've captured you, where are they taking us? I don't know where we're going, but Sodengard waits. No, this can't be happening. This isn't happening. Hey, what village are you from, horse thief? Why do you care? A Nord's last thought should be of home. Rorikstead. I'm from Rorikstead. An alarm. Not just any alarm, the iPhone alarm. No, really any alarm. Even a song you like only takes around a week to become miserable. My mom woke me up because my grandmother passed away. This, waking up to hear someone has died, is dying, or is deathly ill, just sinks your day from the start. I'm so sorry for your losses. A few years ago, I was awoken at probably 5 a.m. The sun was just starting to appear, by the most rancid stench I have ever experienced. It was so rank that it woke me up out of a sound sleep. I am unwakeable. I will silence alarms in my sleep. I have slept through hurricanes, but this stench slapped me in the face so hard that I was up and ready to fight it at the first grasp of consciousness my body had. At first I thought it was some serious ass dog poop, but my bedroom door was still shut, and it would be super weird since my dog doesn't have a history of pooping in the house. So I go on a manhunt for the source of this awful aroma, and I absolutely cannot figure it out. Nothing on the floor, under the bed, on the bed, in the closet, in any piece of furniture, etc. I open the window, partially to let in some fresh air and partially to see if it's coming from outside. Then I walk past my python's enclosure one more time and realize that it is the epicenter of this horrific nightmare fume. I couldn't see much through the barely sunlit room, so I flipped the light switch on to see the side of her enclosure covered in a dried, crusty liquid and some bits of unidentifiable chunks. Absolutely disgusted, I have no choice but to get closer and inspect this hazmat crime scene to find out what happened and to see if she was still okay. She was fine, but coiled up at the opposite end of her enclosure with her head poking up at me, pleading, begging, please, please human, kill me. She had escaped the day before and had been fed the day before that. If you don't know much about caring for snakes, you have to let them rest and digest about 72 hours after eating, otherwise they can and most likely will vomit. Do you know what snake vomit looks like? It's just a whole animal with their head half partially dissolved in acid, depending on how long it was inside the snake. In this case, I looked over and saw a rat's ass from the hip bones down, organs spilled everywhere and goo covering every inch of the enclosure on that side. She had decided to puke the rat's ass directly onto her heat rock, where some of it had been deflected everywhere and the rest had been actively baking while I'd been sleeping. The sight, coupled with the scent, made me lose it. I vomited all over the floor. I go and grab some cleaning supplies, toss her into the bin, and soak a t-shirt in perfume to tie around my mouth and nose while I attack this revolting puke-apocalypse. As I've got my head in her enclosure, straining to hold my breath and trying to squint as much as possible so I don't have to see as much, I turned to throw another wad of dirty paper towels into the bag I had opened on the floor behind me to see my dog snacking on them. I vomited again. Overall, it took me an hour to get the enclosure clean. I had to give her a half-hour soak but babysit her while trying not to fall asleep so she didn't try to submerge her head in dawn. I had to brush my dog's teeth, and the smell didn't leave my room for a week, even with my windows open, 3 wallflowers and fan going 24/7. Ask Reddit. Parents, what is the weirdest thing you have found in your kid's bedroom? Shortly after my son learned to write his name, I found it written on his wall with poop. He denied it. My brother completed kindergarten twice. They told my mother that he would have to stay back a 3rd time because he still couldn't write his name. She took the teacher outside and showed her where my brother had used a key to scratch his name into the side of our family car. My brother said, "Nope, not me, didn't do it." Thankfully, they didn't believe him, and he went to the 1st grade. I found a chunk of brown sugar the size of my fist under my 4-year-old's bed. My daughter likes to sneak candy or cookies into her room when my wife and I aren't looking, but this was a first. Barry, is that how you got ants? Yes, it is another Barry. Yes, it is. I'm the kid here, but when I was 12, my mom found a shoebox full of blood-soaked socks under my bed. I'd gotten my period and was too embarrassed to ask what to do, so I just, socks. I don't know what she thought it was, but the fact that she was relieved when she learned she was holding a shoebox full of menstrual blood and ruined peds is probably telling. I think a box of bloody socks is cosmic justice for letting your daughter turn 12 without knowing what a period is or what to do about it. I was on the receiving end of a parent finding something. I came home from school one day and my dad had a bunch of rubber gloves taped inside a plastic cup sitting on the dining room table from my room. He was convinced they were used for huffing or some other drug-related paraphernalia. The reality was it was a self-built rubber vagina that didn't work. He had disassembled it, kept shaking his head in disappointment that I would do such a thing. He even smelled it at one point. It took everything in me not to bust up laughing, but also no way I could admit what it really was. To this day, 15 plus years later, he still writes it off as part of my drug experimentation phase. Maybe I should finally tell him. Dead squirrel under the bed. I smelled the stench and asked my daughter what it was. She of course had no idea. I sniffed it out. She found it outside and brought it in. Edit, she is not the girl from the YouTube video, nor is she Peter Wiggins. I'm not a parent, I'm the babysitter. But one time, I watched a 6-year-old Jewish girl who was really upset about not celebrating Christmas. Her parents were really orthodox and didn't let her sing Christmas carols or even eat candy canes. As I tucked her in, she showed me a little gingerbread house she had made out of saltine crackers, Skittles, and peanut butter. Cutest thing I ever saw. And I never told her parents as she would have gotten into trouble, but she was something special. Skittles aren't kosher. My parents were so Jewish that they stopped being kosher because it was more money than non-kosher food. A friend in high school made a homemade penis pump out of some tubing, a plastic tube, and some other parts. His mom was cleaning his room one time and found it. She freaked out and was holding it in his face when he got home that day, screaming, "Is this drugs? Are these drugs?" He denied it was drugs and said it was just some junk he was messing with. At least he was honest. "Listen to me, son. Don't you jerk me around. Tell me what it is." Probably a bit late to the show, but here is my story. Throwaway for reasons. While cleaning my daughter's room, my wife found a dildo. And no big deal, right? But this dildo looked familiar. This dildo was my wife's. Okay, this is not a huge deal, a little weird, but we can move on. Or can we? My wife only has one dildo. This dildo was a requested present to her from me. She wanted this specific one because I can go away on work trips for 3 to 6 months at a time on occasion. This dildo is from a mold of my own penis. That is right. I said my daughter had taken my wife's dildo that is molded to be my penis. My daughter stuck my penis mold inside of her. A reciprocating saw. She is 6. I don't own a reciprocating saw. You do now. My parents found a crack pipe in my room when I was in like 3rd grade. I found it on the playground and thought it was a treasure. My 3-year-old does this. Every time she sees broken glass on the ground, "Daddy, treasure! Daddy, diamonds!" and she fights to pick up as much as she can. The imagination is cute and all, but I can't have her picking up shards of broken glass for obvious reasons. Australian toddlers find eggs in the backyard and puts them in a wardrobe. Mum later finds 7 hatched brown snakes, very venomous. I think that must be the worst SFW thing you can find. Australia averages 3 fatal snake bites a year. What? Only 3? Can I do this in reverse and say that my mom once put an effing Chucky doll under my bed when I was about 8? She knew I was terrified of him, and in her defense, I was a rotten kid. My mom would mess with my cousin and me whenever he was over. We're a year apart, so we were about 5 or 6, give or take a year. I had this terrifying clown doll that one of my relatives gave me. She would strategically place it around the house as if it was moving by itself. We eventually took it out back and beat the S out of it with bats. A girl I knew told me that when she was 12, she made a dildo out of a ping pong ball superglued to the end of a marker. I have no idea. Her dad flipped out when he found it and threw it away. She was so upset she threatened to go on Oprah and tell her and the world that he ruined her life. Like one of those PS3 motion sensing controllers? My dad works in the paper business. While growing up, he would always bring home giant pieces of paper for me and my brothers to illustrate or scribble on. The last time I can ever remember drawing on any of the said paper, I was in middle school. It was a blueprint-sized piece of paper, and I spent days on the most elaborate naked blonde woman, sitting totally spread-eagled, using her fingers to spread herself even more open. It was a ridiculous illustration that I used colored pencils and crayons to make look as real as possible. I even signed it in the corner like a real artist would. I kept it rolled up and hidden in my closet, which was a complete mess. While on the way home from a summer camp later that year, my parents told me that they cleaned out my closet for me. I'm 31 years old now, and when I think about it, there is absolutely no way that they didn't unroll it to see what it was before they threw it away. They have never mentioned it, and I will probably never ask them about it. Yes, this is the type of comment that deserves a throwaway. When I was younger, around 2 or 3 years old, I had an irrational fear of my mom getting upset when I'd soil my underwear. Plus, I didn't want to go back to diapers. So, what did I do? Every time I'd ask myself, I'd dispose of my undies into the corner of my closet and close the door behind me. I had no idea what was going through my infantile mind, but it was a good idea at the time. It grew into a rather large, horrifying mound. You can imagine the horror on my mother's face the day she smelled something and followed that trail to the closet. I watched as she cried. Not a parent, but I once found a naked Barbie, bound and gagged in a shoebox under my 9-year-old sister's bed. The shoebox had a window cut out with rubber band bars and was lined with blankets. My sister is 17 now, and no, I've never asked her about it. Some girls play weird with their dolls. My girlfriend used to play pretend that her Barbie got pregnant as a teen and was on the run from Ken, who was the father, and wanted to kill them both. This is at like age 6. The most awkward moment in my life, right here. I was like 18, and I took a shower before going to a 311 concert. I had recently purchased a synthetic vagina, which was pretty sweet at the time. Well, I took it into the shower with me and did my business. I got out of the shower, got dressed, and got in my buddy's car to go to the show. Now, halfway there, I realized that I left this big fake vagina in the family shower and that I wouldn't be home till morning. When I got home the next morning, I slowly made the walk of shame to the bathroom to see that, sure enough, my partner in crime was no longer where I had left it. I go into my room and it's wrapped in a plastic bag sitting on my desk with a note saying, "You're lucky your mother didn't find this. My dad hasn't mentioned it since." My dad found my fake vagina and returned it in a plastic bag. Me and my sister shared a room all growing up, and one time when my mom was cleaning it, she found a detailed drawing of herself giving birth. I'm assuming my sister drew it, But as the artistic one, I of course got blamed. It was awkward, to say the least. When my husband was little, talking 5 or 6 years old, his mother couldn't figure out why his room had been getting smellier and smellier over the previous 2 weeks. She finally did some searching and found a nest in the back of his closet. He had taken 2 eggs out of the fridge, put them in a little nest he made out of his shirts, and put a plastic dinosaur on top of the eggs to attempt to hatch baby dinosaurs. In his little kid's mind, this seemed like a perfectly logical idea. I found all our dead, buried fish from the past years in his closet. Is he a dog? It's kinda sad. Did he talk about why he had them there? My parents were a bit confused when they looked in my closet and found an anatomically correct wooden arm with metal bracket joints and elastic to move the individual fingers. I took make an anatomical model of the arm a bit too literally in my 6th grade science class and felt really dumb holding a working wooden arm in class when everyone else had drawings. I was hiding it because I used the power tools without permission. My parents were pretty cool about it after I had explained why I had wooden body parts in the closet and let me go to an engineering tech school part-time alongside high school a few years later. A hamster. We never bought them one. Turns out a neighbor's hamster had gotten the house. So just a random hamster comes strolling in and goes to the kid's room to live? Pretty much. My kid alerted me to noises in the room. He said it was scaring him one night. I went in, heard some scratching and thought it was a mouse or rat. Looked around a bit, a fat old hamster. My 19-year-old daughter came home for college break. One morning she was out of the house and I went into her room to gather towels for the laundry. Her laptop was on the dresser next to her bed, and on the screen was a hardcore bondage porn paused. On the floor next to her bed, I saw 3 vibrators, a dildo, a jar of Vaseline, and 3 Gatorade bottles full of a yellowish liquid I could only assume was urine, all of which were sitting in the middle of a large wet spot in the carpet, which I had stepped in and had soaked through my sock. I slowly backed out of the room without the towels and never spoke a word of it to anyone until today. I will admit it is now sometimes difficult to keep a straight face when she's acting goody two-shoes. My cousin's parents found a full package of unopened bacon under his bed. He wanted it all for himself. I can't blame his reasoning, but the execution was a bit sloppy. I think the execution was a bit harsh. Got the message across though. He never did it again. Ask Reddit. What's the craziest reason you had to fire someone? Part 2. Not me, but my dad. He has a small handyman company with less than a handful of employees. His tools somehow have the habit of growing legs when he's at construction sites, so he rigorously writes his name on everything with a permanent marker. One day, shortly after he hired someone new, his folding ruler is missing. He asks around if anyone has seen his folding ruler, but that doesn't seem to be the case. He doesn't think much of it. Sometimes things get lost. The next day, he sees the new hire with a familiar-looking folding ruler. He asks him to see it. A new hire refuses. Dad tells him that he's his boss and insists he show him the ruler. He complies under pressure. Sure enough, there's my dad's name on it in the capital letters and bold letters. Now, that couldn't have been an honest mistake, and there probably wouldn't have been any repercussions if he simply said, "Oh, my bad, must have put the wrong one in my pocket. Here's your ruler." But the new hire insisted that this was his ruler, and that the name on the side of it wasn't my dad's handwriting, but rather a note the new hire had written on it himself to remember my dad's name. What makes it even more stupid is that my dad's company pays for the tools for his employees. He could have simply asked for a folding ruler, and my dad would have given him one for free. But no, he needs to steal the boss's folding ruler, and then give the stupidest lie imaginable as an excuse. Profanity-filled road rage ran through an ambulance PA system at a crowded intersection. I had complaints coming in for well over a month. I feel that an ambulance should be allowed to chew you out over the PA for garbage driving. When I was a bank teller, a fellow teller got fired for stuffing her purse with a strap of $100 bills every day, amounting to $10,000. Here's the interesting part. She always put the strap back into her talent drawer at the end of the day. She did this for months and months, apparently without anyone noticing. But when the camera auditors finally did catch it, she was confronted and fired. When they asked her why she put a strap of money in her purse each day, but always put it back, she said that if the bank were ever robbed, then she could just take the money home because everybody would have assumed it was taken by the robber. I worked at a pet store and was the lead cashier, so I had to train this girl who didn't think she had to abide by the uniform because it's just, well, the store name here, and doesn't count as a real job. But that was a warning that, despite her thinking she did not need to follow the uniform rules. Then when ringing up customers, she actually told customers they couldn't buy certain items because we were running low, and she planned on getting a pet soon and wanted these items. I apologized and rung them up. The second warning with me explaining how that's not how it works, and she should shop when she's off the clock. Finally, my manager fired her when she tried to steal one of the cats that were up for adoption, after being told she needed to wait for approval after they do a home visit, and make sure she can care for the cat. Her excuse for trying to steal the cat? Her landlord doesn't allow pets, so she wouldn't be approved, and she'd be a much better pet parent than anyone else who wanted the cat, and much better than any of the customers we got. The girl didn't even last a week. I'm training a new girl. We're sitting at a computer together. The whole time I'm training her, she's scanning the perimeter around her. She's asking about this guy, is he single? What about that guy? She's paying very little to no attention to what I'm telling her about, the job. She's not even looking at what I'm doing as I'm demonstrating the work to her. She's rubbernecking every male who walks past. At first, I was nice. Okay, did you just see what I did there? Now when this happens, we do that, etc., etc. Her eyes were glazed over. She wasn't absorbing anything, I could tell. Nice wasn't working. After a time, I said to her very sharply, "Are you here to work or are you here looking for a boyfriend? Because if you are not here to work, I'm going to need to find someone else for this job." I had hiring authority. That snapped her into reality for about 15 minutes. I finally said, "It's break time." She smiled and said, "I'm going to go up to the 4th floor and see if there's any fresh meat up there." After break time, I sent her into the fax room to collect some faxes I needed. The mail guy was in there changing rolls of fax paper. He came out of the mailroom and said, "I think there's something wrong with your new girl." He was very nervous. I said what happened. Apparently, she was in the fax room, which tended to get hot because of all the machines in there. She had perched her ass up on the edge of the table, hiked her dress up to where her underwear was showing, arched her back, unbuttoned the front of her dress and fanned herself with a sheath of fax pages and said, "Oh, it's just so hot in here." Yeah, like that. Like the opening of a porno. I totally believed him. I believed she did that. 100% she totally did that. I called her temp agency and said she's not working out. I think this was under 2 hours. I have stories about temps for days, lol. Used to work at a laser tag facility. It was mostly high schoolers who worked there. One guy had only been working there a couple of months when he came in on a field trip with some classmates, including his girlfriend. He thought it would be a good idea to sneak his girlfriend into the fog room inside the maze during the game, have sex, and then brag about it to the management team. Underage sex at work is, unsurprisingly, not something you should be engaging in, and definitely not something you should be publicizing. We'd hold those overnight events where you'd come in from midnight to 6 a.m. and play all night long. Had a guy showing up reeking of booze and clearly high on cocaine to work that shift. He got fired on the spot, and I'd occasionally run into him on the bus afterwards. Man, that was the best job though. I have so many insane stories from those times. Harassment. He harassed virtually every person in the department on sexual, racial, and religious grounds. Human resources put up a fight while I had people crying and quitting because of him. I worked with a guy like this when I was still in high school. So many of us complained about him to the boss or owner, but he continued to let it slide for months. I put up with it till after school ended and finally quit along with 2 other people. The main boss or owner proceeded to say we had been immature about the whole thing. When I was working at Burger King, our restaurant manager was away on maternity leave, so we had someone from another store come in over that time to fill the role. He ended up hiring someone who had worked there 5 to 6 years previously. High turnover, so a lot of hiring and leaving. The few staff that had known her before she'd left hated her, but had no idea why she left. She even passed all the checks from the head office before she was hired. Restaurant manager comes back about a month later after she's been hired, takes one look at her and rages. Like my RM is yelling at this girl. She's yelling at the manager that hired her and all the crew that had known her when she was here last. Obviously, none of us knew what was going on, but it turns out this girl hadn't left, she'd been fired. And management at the time hadn't told anyone that, just that she'd quit. This girl had scammed BK by pretending to be pregnant, fake ultrasounds, plans, baby shower, the whole lot, and then took paid maternity leave so she could go work somewhere else because it was seasonal work with better pay, with the idea of having a job for the off-season to come back to. I have no idea how she got through the head office checks, but she was fired that day. Super impressive when you consider that I'm in New Zealand, so getting fired is usually a month-plus long process here. I used to work for a very well-known cruise company. A guy told me the story of his firing one night. Obviously, he was able to overturn the decision since he was telling me. Every once in a while, we would have events for crew, and they would be given free snacks, chicken strips, mozzarella sticks, etc. After the party, this guy took 2 chicken strips back to his room and placed them in his refrigerator. Due to health and safety regulations on board, nothing that can spoil is allowed in refrigerators. This is important for later. During a weekly cabin inspection, the inspectors found the 2 chicken strips he forgot about. Those officers told their bosses, who informed the captain of the ship and the cruise director, informed the shoreside partners who make all the decisions, and the shoreside partners recommended the employee be terminated for stealing from the company. Again, not for breaking the rule of having something that can spoil in his fridge, stealing 2 free chicken strips from a work event. Somehow he was able to overturn his firing, but he still received unusually harsh punishments for his crime. Guy took home 2 free chicken strips from a work party. Officers found them, and the higher-ups in the company decided he should be fired. He said, "My ex-wife died, and there's no one to take care of our kids. I needed a week off to sort everything out. Ex called to talk to him. Boom!" One of the guys went to lunch with short hair and came back with a ponytail down to his arse. Identical twins that were sharing the job. All the guys knew and thought it was funny. Yikes. For number 2, I think I would have let it continue until they bragged about it. Then I would say, the 2 of you are making 1 paycheck. In what way are you winning? Neither wanted a full-time job. My boss joked to keep the better worker, but in truth, liability would be a nightmare, as the job they were doing was pretty dangerous. Everyone knew, except management. A guy was hired at the metal fab shop I was working at. He had been laid off when we were slow. He was rehired on a Friday and started Monday. Goes and does his drug test first thing. He failed. Apparently he had celebrated being rehired over the weekend. It was funny listening to my boss say, "Are you kidding me? You knew our testing policy. You couldn't wait for 3 days." I had to fire a pizza delivery driver because he threatened another driver with the giant rocker knife we used to cut pizzas. His reason was the other driver was gay and he didn't like his decadent lifestyle. Describing it as decadent is the gayest part of the story. I was a florist and had a 40-something woman delivering for me. I received a call from the building manager of a brand new office building with only 1 tenant, telling me my driver wrote on the elevator wall with a Sharpie. They had the video showing that she was the only person to use the elevator during the time the vandalism took place. The worst part for me was this happened a few days before Valentine's Day. The saddest was a lady that smelled like alcohol pretty frequently. I don't think she was drunk on the job, maybe some shots done at lunch, combined with sweating out the prior night. But the other members of the team started to complain about it, and it was becoming disruptive. Interestingly enough, there was someone I worked with that always smelt of pickle juice. Turns out he was drunk at work the whole time and masking the smell with pickles, which works to a certain extent, but not perfect, apparently. Manager showed up drunk to an overnight shift he wasn't working and then got into a fight with 2 associates. begged my associate manager not to tell me what happened. I didn't seem to remember there were cameras all over the store. Oh, also the other manager at another job who sexually harassed 3 different employees and got a 4th pregnant. The first 3 came forward once we began an investigation after the 4th told us about the pregnancy. Ask Reddit. What's the craziest reason you had to fire someone? I was a bar manager. This guy came in one night and said he was an aspiring DJ and asked if we would consider hiring him to come in on just Sunday nights to DJ for us. He said we wouldn't have to pay him at first, he would just take tips and we could renegotiate after he helped to build up our Sunday night crowd. He lasted less than 3 months. He drove away so much business and I got so many complaints. He played the same songs every week, and when people made requests for commonly known songs, he had no idea who they, the musicians, were. I had to fire someone who was working for free. He was a nice guy, which is the only reason he lasted as long as he did. Not my personal experience, but one fellow contractor had a safety guy for 6 months. One weekend he took a trip out of town for non-work related reasons, but used the company truck and charged it all on the company credit card. On his way up there, he ran a random person off the road who just so happened to be one of the owners of another contractor who works closely with the one who employed this guy. Shortly after, he was fired, and I'm sure criminal charges were being brought against him. A couple of weeks later, his wife calls his former employer, saying he had called her randomly and killed himself in his truck on the side of the highway. I and another colleague went searching for records of this guy, couldn't find anything, no claims of suicide in the local paper where he supposedly killed himself at. Thought it was weird, but whatever. It turns out this guy falsified all his qualifications and job experience. Fast forward a month later, and I heard through the grapevine that the original contractor who had employed this guy received a call from some contractor across the country because he applied for work there and put them down as his previous employer. He faked his own death to get out of trouble with the company, then proceeded to put them down on his resume, not expecting anyone to check his references. Lol. I work for a hotel. I had to fire 2 separate employees on 2 different occasions for letting people in vacant rooms to smoke crack and steal from the rooms. It reminds me of my brother's hotel where they hired a welfare recipient to work in housekeeping and help with maintenance. The first thing he asked was where the safe was. My brother caught him trying to break into the safe 3 hours later and fired him on the spot, of course. I had an employee that was going to get fired for simply showing up late constantly with no legit reason. During the term meeting, she tells me another employee cut the brake lines in her car. It's obvious this was to save her from being fired. She didn't realize that something like that gets cops involved. She was termed, and then detectives showed up to her house to get statements. Of course, no evidence of lines being cut, and now she's dealing with police for making false statements. Fired a high schooler because his girlfriend kept showing up and they would disappear behind the racks. I told him his girlfriend was banned, trying not to fire him, and she kept sneaking back. Worked in an office, and they hired a girl from a temp agency to help me. She wouldn't do anything unless I walked her through each step after telling her she had to do it. Hey, an estimate just arrived on the fax right next to you. Complete the quote and send it back. Come to find out, she was playing Spider and Solitaire on her computer. She was also sneaking out back, and the warehouse guys thought she was doing drugs. I told my boss, get rid of her. I would rather work alone than babysit her, so he called the temp agency and told them to stop sending her. She showed up the next day, so the boss sent her home and called the agency saying, hey, she's useless, stop sending her. She showed up again the next day. This went on for over a week. The people at the temp agency said they told her to stop showing, but she kept coming in every morning. Mind you, usually 10 to 20 minutes late. My boss wouldn't say anything to her face, so finally, I said, hey, we can't afford to pay you, so we have to let you go through the temp agency. They should have told you. She was all, oh, I thought they were joking. I was so glad she was gone. Years ago at a lumber company, I had a guy, less than 2 hours after he started on his first day, pick up his car with a forklift and stand underneath it to see what was rattling when he drove. Turned out it was his brain. His head wasn't screwed on tight. I worked retail, and we had an employee that would hide and take naps inside racks of clothes. Somehow that wasn't the reason we fired her. We fired her for stealing clothes and then wearing them to work. Like, you can somewhat understand having a nap, and maybe she thought hide in plain sight with the clothes. During my summer job when I was in college, I had a shift with this guy who didn't show up. I didn't have his number, so I asked my boss to look into it. He gets back to me a little later and says the guy is on his way. I should be there in about 5 to 10 minutes. 45 minutes later, the guy still hasn't shown up. So I text my boss again, and he gets back to me a little later and says he's certain the guy should be there any minute. But he still doesn't show up. This continues until the end of the shift, and the guy still isn't here. The closing took a little longer than normal because I was on my own. So I was still working half an hour after my shift was supposed to be over, when this guy strolls in with his girlfriend. He half-heartedly helps for a little while, in between chatting with his girlfriend, before saying he's got some important family dinner and he has to leave. Apparently, this wasn't even the first time this had happened, but amazingly, this wasn't what got him fired. What finally did it was a couple of weeks later when we had a staff meeting. My boss had an open shift that he needed someone to fill, and this guy volunteers. So my boss, in front of all the staff, has the following conversation. You want to work this shift? Yes. Are you sure you're available to work this shift? Yes. So that means you'll be at the location at such a time on such a day. Yes. Then he still didn't show up. Some people, man. My co-worker at a coffee shop. I told the customer she didn't feel like making X drink and she should go elsewhere. I wore Cookie Monster PJ pants while we had a very strict black or khaki pants, no jeans, no leggings policy at the time. Couldn't figure out the concept of milk. This still baffles me to this day. Like, I was trying to show her how to steam milk properly. She was off in La La Land, and when she snapped back into the conversation asking, "What are we doing again?" Followed by me reminding her, and she quite literally asked what was in the gallon jug that I poured into the metal pitcher. I told her it was milk, and she just looked at me, her eyes saying, "Huh?" She was there for 2 days. Dumbass stole a $100 bill out the register at the end of his first shift alone on register. Firing's done because people do not realize that the cash gets counted. They activated a gift card for $100 and keyed in $100 as if someone had paid $100 for the gift card. Of course, that night the draw was $100 short, and activation was on the receipt. She was already on the radar under suspicion of taking a 20 from the draw. Then $20 disappeared from another draw, but not one she had been using. Her cashier number was not on the record. Except for the security, footage did show something at the register. It turns out she memorized another employee's cashier number. Sneaky, but not sneaky enough. A firing done for other reasons. One employee was fired for pretending to ring up his friend. He could have gotten away with it. He scanned everything on price check mode, pretended to swipe his buddy's credit card, and fed a length of blank register tape out as if a receipt were printed out. No one noticed anything off. Except his buddy never asked him to do it. The cashier took it upon himself to hook him up, and in the end, the friend was left thinking, what the hell just happened? He felt so guilty the next day he brought the items back and told the manager what had happened. Not too crazy, more stupid than crazy. One of the programmers on my team was sitting at his desk looking at porn. And this is cubicle land, no offices. My director walked into the area to talk to me and saw it. Then it was the first thing he told me about, so I got up and walked over for a look myself, and there it was. I and the director looked at each other, and I said, I gotta take care of this. So we walked back to HR. I told them what was going on and what we saw, and they told me to fire him. So I did. He lost a $110,000 job for looking at porn on his computer at work. When I worked in hotels, I was promoted to front desk manager. My first task was to hire someone. I ended up getting this very charismatic guy that was a little over the top, but overall seemed like a solid employee. After I ended up hiring him, and on his first day, he asked me if it's okay if he carries his gun on him. And I think that's strange, but it is his right, and the owners honestly didn't care so long as he had his license. He was never able to produce a license, so he was never able to bring his handgun on the property. About a week into his employment, we find out that he's been calling guests, specifically the really attractive females, and asking them if they need any overnight service. We were very understaffed and my boss decided that instead of firing him, we were going to take him off the desk and put him on basic groundsman duties. Part of these duties included driving the shuttle to the airport and back, and also filling up the shuttle when it got low on fuel, which means that he had access to the gas card. Our accountant confronts me one day about some very strange charges to the gas card. Apparently, we had been filling up the shuttle near daily at anywhere between $20 to $45. We looked into it and got the surveillance footage from the gas station, and it turns out this kid was filling up his friends' cars and even his own car. When confronted, he tells my boss that I said it was okay. Obviously, that wasn't true, and they didn't believe him. He ended up also being my first termination. One of the other employees Googled his name and found out he was a child predator. He was in a sexual relationship with a 12-year-old girl when he was 26. I also found out that day that we didn't actually do background checks. We just said we did and assumed anyone with a history wouldn't bother applying. We had someone fall asleep at his desk with a lit cigarette in his hand. In an office full of cubicles like maybe 6-7 years ago, smoking wasn't legal anywhere indoors, let alone in an office building, LMAO. And the first time he wasn't even fired. He was fired when it happened again. Had a guy in my team start smoking a cigarette at his desk. He was diabetic, and when confronted it was clear he was low on blood sugar. A soda later, and he was quickly himself. CEO ordered me to fire one of my interns because he was trying to hit on one of the other interns the CEO had the hots for. I'm curious how you were told to fire him. Was it just, hey, fire that guy? Or did he actually say, I've got the hots for that intern he's hitting on, and I won't stand for it? He said to get rid of that guy after that guy asked her to do something after work. Everyone knew that a particular intern was off limits. What's something that you once believed to be essential in your life, but after going without decided it really wasn't? Tobacco. Every day I would tell myself, this is bad for you, but you can quit any time. It seemed like I was in control when I really wasn't. I saw it as essential without seeing it as essential, if you know what I mean. I believe that is what makes cigarettes so addictive. They make you lie to yourself. Once I stopped, I truly felt like I could live the rest of my life without tobacco. I agree, but this applies to any addiction, TBH. I believed it was essential to be accompanied by people so that I wouldn't feel lonely. However, I've realized that there's a massive difference between being alone and feeling lonely. Sometimes I don't feel lonely despite being alone, and other times I end up feeling lonely even though I have company. Sometimes I don't feel lonely despite being alone, and other times I end up feeling lonely even though I have company. I've always only felt lonely around other people. I used to hold on to every single workbook from my primary and secondary school, bits of cardboard and fabric I could use for the stuff and other stuff like that. After moving out of a house for a year then returning, I realized I'm never actually going to do stuff with them. Living without them for a year helped me see I don't need to hold on to this stuff, which I think saved me from a potential hoarding problem. Subazone, the opioid maintenance medication. It's helped for many, and I believe it helped me to a certain extent. However, every time I would try to get off of it, I would land right back where I started. After the last time, once I'd picked up using again, I decided to just cold turkey instead of getting back on the medication. Once the withdrawals and mental fog cleared, I rediscovered actual joy. Well done. Not an easy thing to do at all. Probably sounds vain, but things like eyelash extensions or getting my nails done, I really thought I needed those things to feel pretty. That's the power of advertising, baby. It's proven. Women are more likely to get hired for a job by wearing at least some makeup than none at all or too much. Men, we just have to wear a tie, which is a one-time purchase that doesn't require maintenance. New clothes. I used to do the seasonal shop, 1 to 10 new items for every season, all necessities, so 4 times a year. I had over 3 closets worth of clothes, including things I'd had in high school 10 years ago. A year ago, I decided that not buying new clothes would be a good way to reduce my spending. So I started only buying clothes that truly filled the gap or replaced something I'd actually worn out. This means that in a year, I've only bought one work dress, one pair of leggings, one basics shirt, and one special event outfit. I started gutting my huge collection of clothes and getting rid of all the items I didn't absolutely love wearing or need for work. It has been freeing, and I would never go back to the seasonal shop life. Going out all the time. Mine was the opposite. I would stay in every evening because to me it was important to keep the same routine of wake, work, home, sleep. I hated staying out because then I wasn't at home painting or programming. Suddenly I had a mental status shift and realized I hated going home after work. So I made about 15 different friends, barely any knew each other, and would hang out every single night for 3 years before going home to bed. Now I'm at a happy medium. Just kidding, I'm in quarantine. Dessert. I cut back massively on sweets 18 months ago and I've lost 60 to 65 pounds. I didn't really miss sweets after a while. Any tips you have for a newbie trying to give up desserts? Start slow. If you have dessert every night, cut out one night and make that the new habit. Then increase it by one more. Or start making fruit the dessert some nights. You can make amazing apple sauce just by finely slicing some apples and simmering them in a little water with cinnamon for an hour and then mashing them up. Or have a piece of 80% dark chocolate. Your body agrees that it's getting a piece of chocolate, for the chocolate is so rich that it tends not to ask for much more. I tried cold turkey and it was a really painful experience for me with a really hard backlash. Slowly adjusting my habits over a period of months and even years has been much easier for me. The approval of others. Oh man, this. I had a horrible time through high school with this issue, to the point of half-assed suicide attempts. Jump ahead about 10 years. I'm cleaning out some stuff and come across my high school yearbook. I decided to flip through and look up some of the people I knew and found myself LMAO. All the people in those pictures were just kids. They were no more or less dorky and immature than I was. Why the hell did I spend so much energy giving a damn what they thought of me? Especially since I've never seen any of them ever since. Disposable paper towels. During university, I was too cheap and broke to pay for them, so I went without. Once I got used to using washable cloths to clean up, I didn't even really feel the need for paper towels. Now that I'm out of school and I can afford to buy paper towels, I keep some around. I realize how wasteful they are and I try to use them sparingly. I only use paper towels for cleaning up disgusting things like cat vomit. Cable TV or satellite TV. Agreed. Cut cable years ago. Never missed it. Why would I pay to be advertised to? Bottled water. I live in an area with safe tap water. It doesn't taste great, but gets the job done. When coronavirus hit and there was a crazy rush on bottled water, I couldn't get my hands on any. Turns out, I don't care about bottled water. I'm drinking tap water like a champ now and it's practically free. Sugar in coffee or tea. I freely chose to give it up, and I don't miss it. This is my hurdle. I don't eat sweets, don't drink soda, but I still put too much sugar in my coffee. I need to work on that. Did you wean yourself down or just cut it abruptly? Rigorous skincare routine. But only because no matter what I try, my skin seems to stay the same, which I'm fine with. Same. Used to put on so many different creams and lotions specialized for any small part of my body until one day I went traveling and forgot them at home. After 1 week I realized my skin looked exactly the same, with or without all of this. Now they're just taking up space in my bathroom though, so I started using them again since I bought them, but after that, I'm not going to invest all my money in that S. Nicotine. Haven't smoked since quarantine started. Good job and good luck. Soda. I still drink it, but I drink a lot more water now. I was born with an extra sensitive stomach and sense of smell, and I can't stand soda. It just tastes like if you put maple syrup in water and then made it painful to drink. Alcohol. 16 months sober. Congratulations, man. I've been 15 months sober. It happened unexpectedly, but I realized I needed this for the longest. Never going back to drinking. Facebook. Didn't Facebook just turn into garbage in the early 2010s, which is why everyone ended up leaving? Yeah, around 2014. I rode the whole wave. It was at its peak when it only allowed college students. Even for a while after it opened its doors to everyone, it was still good. You still had a majority of fun stuff your friends posted. Not to sound cliched, but it got ruined once all the boomers and grandparents discovered it. Then that allowed for even more uneducated people of every age to hop on, and it just went downhill from there. That abusive girlfriend that I had in high school. Same here, though I wish I'd found out before she drove away most of my friends. Dude, that sucks. Hope you stay strong with the rest of your friends. Coloring my grey hair. Waste of money and time. I no longer care if it makes me look old. Women spend a lot of money to get that beautiful platinum color that I have naturally. Female hair, and I'd totally let my premature grey grow out if I could have that cool streak versus peppered all over. Instagram. Not seeing people desperately trying to get likes and influence that has done wonders my mental health. Hi, I would just like to say at one point I felt the same way. Then I followed a bunch of accounts for my interests, travel, board games, etc. Instagram is like a little zen moment when I poop now. Anyone else unhappy with Instagram should give it a try. Bullying siblings. For years I thought I'd had to keep accommodating them, tying myself into knots to try and get their approval or even just acceptance because they came out of the same uterus as me. It turns out that going no contact at all, calmly and without malice, was easy and oh so peaceful. At first I thought you meant that you'd given up bullying your siblings. Coffee. Thanks to a series of events, I was unable to have my morning cup of joe and had to go without it this month. Thanks Corona. Thanks to quitting, my acne has cleared up and I feel a little better without the high highs and the low lows. Also the never-ending chase of the caffeine dragon is a plus. Toxic friends. I had a lot of toxic friends in my early 20s and in retrospect, it definitely had a negative impact on my life. Decided to go back to college at 25 and just cut off contact with them. My life has dramatically improved by vetting those I let in my inner circle. Makeup. Same here. I only wear makeup for special occasions, and it makes me feel extra pretty for a bit. When I wore makeup every day, I thought I was ugly without it, and I felt dependent on it. I think it's a fun way to dress up now. I might get downvoted, but weed. I wasn't physically addicted, but I smoked every 2 to 3 hours every day for 17 years. It had become a warm coat in a cold world. Having a daughter, I realized I was much like my dad in drinking. I was an irritable arsehole when I wasn't smoking. Would pick fights over stupid stuff and spend most of my time too tired to do much beyond what was required of me. I was constantly broke and borrowing money. It's so nice to be clear-headed with energy. I spend more time with my family and I even sleep better. This is by no means directed at other people. I still love weed, the culture, and my fellow heads. Everyone needs to do what is right for their own lives. Approval or confirmation of others. It took me way too long to realize that I do not need confirmation of others as proof that something is wrong. And the other way around, if they deny it, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Bottled water. I am, and have always been, an avid water drinker. I spent nearly 20 years of my life only drinking bottled water. Now I feel so horrible because of all the pollution. I now have a Brita filter water bottle and will drink from the tap a good bit, except for well water. Yuck! I never understood the need for bottled water except if, you'll be in a physical location without water, or if a hurricane is coming or something similar. Makeup. Spent a month in Panama where I'm too hot and sweaty all the time to wear any, and it's just made me realize that I'm actually happy with my face as it is. I'm an SFL, and I'm with you. A good moisturizer and sunblock is all I need. Labels. I spent about 25 years thinking that I needed to clearly define myself by labels in order to fit in or gain respect. Ultimately, I found that none of the many, many labels on places like Tumblr applied to me with the precision I wanted. This struggle with my identity bothered me badly for a very long time. I finally realized that even if I did manage to encapsulate the whole of my being into one line of text, what do I do with that information? The only result I can see now would be that I'd just limit my behavior and preferences to continue adhering to those labels, and I'd be afraid to allow change into my life. And also, no one cares. My value to a person or group is based on my skills in the context of that group, not on some overcomplicated identity resume. I'd still call myself by certain approximate labels when necessary to add context to a comment, but I don't make them a priority in my life anymore. It's actually quite enjoyable to just be a nebulous entity. I don't have to behave based on some set of rules that I picked out.